Let's go.
With your
Yes,
trade.
sir. Let's do it. All right, we are starting the meeting, July 21. Do we approve the minutes?
August 18th.
I'm sorry, August 18th. Are we approving the minutes from July 21? I was reading that.
Yep.
Thank you.
So moved.
Second. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Okay, passed unanimous. So financial report, we're on to you, Tanya.
All right, perfect. Water gallons sold are slightly down a bit from last year, about 1%, but revenues remain strong. Overall expenses are favorable, about $53,000. We've spent about $450,000 in capital so far. Cash on hand through the end of July was at $2.1 million. And we did receive some dividends from MMA for workers' comp and property and casualty. And those totaled $4,007.
That's because the people, our workers aren't getting injured and doing claims.
Absolutely.
Working safe.
That's good.
And one thing we mentioned last night at the sewer trustee meeting, which is something we did last year, we got a check last year as well, which was more than we'd ever received. This one is even higher because it's combining workers' comp plus property casualty. Last year, we got authorization from both boards to use a portion of that for a employee luncheon, and we got them one of these cups, looks like this. Not this specific one, but it was a Yeti cup that had a safety logo on it. So last night, the sewer trustees authorized $500 of their, it was like a 3,000 and change check they got back, but they authorized $500 to go towards an employee luncheon. So I'm requesting the board here tonight to appropriate $500 of this $4,007 check to go towards matching for the employees.
All right, we got a motion for that?
Can I make a motion for that?
I second that motion.
Anybody have any issue with that? So the motion would be up to $500 or 500 even?
Well, up to 5. We don't have a exact number yet, but
Up
if
to
I could get
500, is that
500.
good?
Yep.
Okay. Did we do up to 500 last
We
time?
did up to
Yes.
1,000.
We did up to 1,000 last
But
time.
we don't
I think
we
sewer
fig-
did. Sewer did, but
Sewer did, but we figured just in case it goes over the 5, that gives you a little bit of leeway. We know he's not gonna spend it all.
Okay, do we want,
Do we know how much you spent?
Yeah, how much you spent last year?
it wasn't that much. The original appropriation was enough for it. We didn't
so
end up
let's say
spending all that.
we
Up
authorize
to 500.
around 500, up to 1,000 if necessary.
That's good, that's flexibility.
Does that work for everybody?
It's a friendly amendment?
Friendly amendment, is that good with everybody?
Yeah, that's good.
Anybody have
Try to
anything
get
else that you want to talk about on that? Okay, all in favor? All opposed, that passes unanimously. So around 500, up to 1,000. Okay?
Were we still on ratification?
I think we're still on, no, we're still on financial report, Tanya. Are you,
Nope, are there any questions?
I only had one. I know we got a full agenda, so not too much, but I had a question I saw on the lake monitoring bill. I haven't seen these before, but
Yep.
April 1st through May 31st, 2 months,
Mhm.
and it's $20,000. Who gets that
That's
money?
for the year.
Oh, that's for the year. And who gets that money?
Bates College.
So what does it mean by, so that's not like the patrols, we have,
No,
we
no,
pay
this
somebody
is-
to patrol them.
It's Holly, Dr. Holly Ewing and her staff does lake monitoring for the Toledo Trickier. They've got that buoy out there that monitors at the deep hole, that monitors all the
Okay.
parameters, the lake temperature and.
They got a nickname for that buoy, right?
Margaret.
Margaret, yeah.
Margaret. And so they give us the data, so it's like, we'd
Yeah.
have to do it if they didn't type thing.
Yep.
That was one of the things I was talking to Tanya before the meeting.
And I noticed that's a 50% split too, so that's
Right.
considered one of those.
Correct.
I saw that number, and I said, yeah, we got a $63,000 budget. We got
so it's really
$1,000
40
bill.
or it's 10 each?
10 each.
It's 10.
All right, good.
Okay.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Tanya. Move to ratify payment of bills.
I move that we ratify the payment of bills.
Okay, anybody have any questions, comments on the bills?
I had a few and they answered my questions.
Great. So all in favor? Opposed? Great, that passes unanimously. Open session? Okay, doesn't appear there's anyone from the
Just a quick
public.
question, under Lewis and cost apportionment that Sid sent out, he said he would like to discuss a format.
Hold on, are we on, this is for the
Well,
public?
There's,
This is
it's
for-
not on the agenda, but he's asked for it to be on the agenda in this thing?
Hold on, but we're on open session right now. So this is
Public
for the
open
public,
session.
this is
A
not
member
the
of the
trustee
public
open
asked for
session.
something to be on the agenda, you're saying?
Well, no, there was a member of the public that was interested in hearing what was going on with this, but I'm just wondering, you know, if it's not on the agenda and we can't get it on the agenda, are we talking about Lewis and cost apportionment tonight?
I think it's on the, it should be.
I don't think it's on the agenda. I think it was just a clerical error.
So the way you would get it on the agenda is you would suspend the rules and you would ask to add something.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to suspend.
Let's, I'm gonna close open session.
Yep,
And then we're gonna move on to, so there's nobody from the public to talk, open session. So we're closing open session.
okay.
You wanna suspend the rules?
I'd like to suspend the rules.
And you wanna update the,
Just to update the agenda to include what Sid had said on page 2, I would like to discuss a format and plan with the trustees to conduct such meetings. A copy of the resolve is included in the packet for Lewis and cost apportionment. I think it should just be under old business, but it was never added.
is that under the 10-person complaint?
Standing.
No, that's something different. This is just the Lewis and cost apportionment
Oh, okay.
of his agenda notes.
Oh, yeah. And I thought, when we discussed that would fall under, because that had the 10-person complaint is sort of.
As long as it's discussed there, that's fine. Yeah.
Or it could be brought up, well, I had my own notes here to bring it up under, we're also discussing the RFP. A lot of this ties together.
Yeah.
Under the
So-
RFP for legal services.
I like the
Well-
standing agenda item, though. I mean, it shouldn't fall off.
Okay, so we have a motion to suspend the rules and add to the agenda. Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay? Let's discuss. You want to add the cost apportionment, Lewiston cost apportionment to the agenda for today?
Yeah, I mean, I just confirmed with Sid that he wants to talk about that
Sure,
today.
okay, all right. Any other discussion?
Does it need to be separate?
Well, it was,
What
it was
Sid
gonna
wants
be,
to talk about?
No, you can add it and we can talk about it. I mean, I did have some information in here, but it
Let's-
wasn't labeled as such.
Well,
So
let's make it separate if it has to be separate, but I don't want to just touch on it and say it's not on
what
the
I think we should
agenda.
do is we should put it on this agenda right after RFP for legal services, because that's where it falls in Sid's notes.
Okay.
Sounds like a good friendly
That's
amendment.
perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're adding, so any other discussion about adding the Lewiston cost apportionment piece to the agenda after the RFP for legal services? All in favor? All opposed? Okay, so that's now come after the RFP for legal services. Thank you, Andy. All right, so now we are done with open session. Activity project report, Mr. Broadbent.
All right, I'll run through these. During July, a lot of our activities were as project work, so I'll just run this right through. Not a lot of paving going on, so not a lot of activity on gates. We did get Grace Lawn prep as they're putting the surface pavement down on that here in the coming weeks. Hydrants, we did have a program this summer where we're painting a bunch of our hydrants. You see some activity there, and the rest is just kind of normal maintenance of hydrants. New services, they're kind of trickling in at this time of year. We're doing pretty good. We've got just a little less than we did last year, but we're still, eight new services on the year. Again, not a lot of work under services just because we're doing a lot of project work this time of year. The rest of the activity report's pretty standard, unless anybody had any questions.
Like I got on the station checks, Goff Hill, 112 hours to remove weeds. and
Yeah,
brush.
so Goff Hill, the storage tank up there's a 4 million gallon storage tank. And when it was installed inside of the old reservoir impoundment, which was like 8 million gallons. The rest of the impoundment area was filled with crushed stone. Well, over the years, it's grown up into a jungle. And you can't mow it because it's all stone. So we had a summer kid and one of our other guys, we went in there and we pulled all the weeds, and it was a pretty big effort, but it's all clear and good. Outside of that, we're gonna have to bring in equipment, dig it all out, screen it, get the weeds out.
Okay.
It was starting to structurally affect the tank. The weeds are starting to try to get into the concrete and stucco, so that was a pretty big effort we did this summer. So that's all clear, I'm doing good now.
Mike, under services, first page,
Yep,
top, last one, 409 Court Street, 32 hours to dig and repair a service pump. That's like 2 men for 2 working days.
that was 6 guys for one day.
Oh, good.
And it wasn't a whole day, but because we had to do traffic control, we had to block 1 lane of traffic.
Oh,
It just, it turns, if you start flagging, you start adding a lot of people. So it gets costly sometimes, especially on a busy road.
Their service boxes are usually out off the public way.
Yeah, this one was in the sidewalk, and to dig it, we had to have the equipment sitting in the road and get the dump truck in there. It has to sit in the road. We had to block 1 lane, so.
Thank you.
So if that's it on the activity report, I'll roll into projects. So 3rd Street, we are completely done with from Broke all the way to the dead end of 3rd. Now that was Longchamp's doing the replacement. We did the temporaries, cut in all the valves, and did the prep work for that. That work is completely done. We still have a small piece on 3rd Street on the lower end that'll be done later this summer. Louise and Lucille, we are, as of today, as of right now, we are completely done on Louise and Lucille. We are still waiting for paving, which will happen towards the end of next week. And we'll be able to wrap that project up. Taylor Brook Bridge, that was the big project that we worked on since the last trustee meeting. I think we were actually working on it during the last meeting. We were able to wrap that up. We were able to get a new water main installed around the bridge project area. It was a really big effort by all of our crew. There was people working all hours, weekends, just nonstop until we got that done. There was a lot to balance there between the flows of the stream and the tight timeline, and then it didn't rain all spring, and then it did nothing but rain in July. So it was a lot to deal with, but I was pretty proud of the way everybody pulled together and got that job done. So that was a good one to get behind us. So that was really good. The only one that I wanted to get some authorization on tonight, Pearl, Pine, Willow, and School. We have in our budget $133,000 to replace the water mains on those 4 streets. I'd like to get authorization to proceed with that. We do have the pipe all ready for that, but we just need to buy the rest of the parts and start the work. So I think we're in a good position to take that on and wrap that up and hit our 2 miles of pipe. I think right now we're at 1.32. So with a little bit we have left to do on 3rd, and this will be over 2 miles. So
when do you close it out for the year? When are you done?
as soon as we're paved, I'm done. That's officially in my book. I'm done with that work.
Well, I'm talking about how far up in the year do you go replacing?
Oh, they stop. It depends on weather, because once they close the paving plants, I can't pave anymore. I can't do any work.
Right.
Otherwise, we're going to spend a lot of money babysitting a trench all winter long. So usually, sometimes it's like the week before Thanksgiving, depending on temperatures. But if it gets really warm in November, you never know. Some days
That's
stay
pushing
warm.
it into the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
That's really far. Yeah.
We like not to be because a lot of projects pile up. You don't want to have a lot of open trenches when you get into the middle of November. It's a real scramble.
Do you need a motion for this?
Yes.
Like Hotel Road.
Yeah.
I make a motion, we go ahead and pave Pine, Pearl, Willow, School Streets.
I'll second
Okay, anybody have any questions?
Just to ask, when we add something like this, it's from budgeted money, is
Yeah.
that correct?
It's
So we're
just
just,
in the capital improvement.
so why are we,
It's an operational courtesy, you told us that last time.
No, actually, no, if it's under equipment, it's approved in the budget. The capital improvement plan is not part of the approved budget, but it's in there as a placeholder, and they're approved on an individual basis, so we can track the revenues. If our revenues aren't tracking that well, then that allows us a chance to approve them.
We actually did that
case-by-case
last
basis.
year as well, I believe. We
Right, 'cause of
might have done
COVID,
that because of COVID. I know we canceled a piece of equipment, but I don't know, I think we also did.
Yep,
We
we
cut back-
we cut out $350,000 out of the capital budget because of COVID, because we didn't know how the revenues were gonna track.
Right.
But you'll see Pine, Pearl, and Willow under your budget, and it's in there, but it's in there under the capital program. So those are approved individually
Okay.
when they come up.
Anybody else?
Great, thanks.
Are there gonna be any security expenses with the tree streets?
Yep. Flagging.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Got it?
One last thing to update you on, our capital improvement plan of our water system. I did get the first draft of that. We're reviewing it right now. I just got through most of it today. They did a really good job. I'm hoping to have a draft to share with the board by the time of the next meeting, maybe something we can send out with the packets for you to look at. But they broke things down into like 4 categories. They looked at fire flow ratings for our system. Okay, this is your system. What should your fire flows be? So if they're below what they should be, what do you need to do to replace pipes to get it where it needs to be? They looked at city and MDOT projects, long-range capital projects. Where are we going to need to keep up with work? They looked at age-based and material-based priorities. So, okay, where's the oldest pipe? And where's the material of pipe, like galvanized and cast iron, that you want to get rid of? So they took all of those into consideration, and they built short-term and long-term improvement project lists based off from the quantity of pipes needed to be done and the urgency that they need to be done. There's one last factor that they're going to incorporate into this formula, and that's break frequency. That's water main breaks. So that will also be factored into this formula. So we haven't put that in that just yet. I guess they like to do that after the first draft, just so you can figure out if you want to make those a priority or not. Certainly, if you have a lot of breaks on a street, that's a high priority. So that's going to be one more thing we'll be incorporating, and we'll have in it when we present it to the trustees to take a look at. So that's coming along well.
Excellent.
So that's all I
Thank you,
have.
Mike. Appreciate it. I think that brings us to new business. Water quality updates in.
Yep, water quality update, the month of July, it did follow historical trends. Turbidity numbers were low, 0.39 was the average. If you've been around a while and you've seen the trend in the charts, you know that the months of August, September, October, and part of November is when, if there's any spike in the biomass of algae, that's where you're going to see it kind of trend up. Our Secudis readings following normal trends has gone down a bit. It was 12.5 meters last month. The most recent numbers are down around 10. That's still a good number. You can see 30 feet down into the water column without losing sight of that disc. So it's still a good number. We're not in any danger at all. But we have, from our testing, have seen the biomass start to increase a little bit. But again, that is normal given this time of year. The lake temperature has it's been a little erratic this year. We've had some hot trends and then some cold trends, so it's kind of interesting watching the lake temperature trends. But overall, it's within the parameters they've always been. One thing I wanted to mention: that our lab director Chris Curtis has been working to recertify the laboratory. That is a huge process. He completed that, so we've got our lab accreditation. You have to do that every so often. It's like a 70-page report of all the testing they have to do, and the confirmation of their testing procedures has to be reviewed by the state. But he's got that done, so that's a huge feather in his cap to get that done. Included in your packet, I just put in I think it's the last thing in there, just for it's an FYI, just the survey from the American Water Works Association. Every year they put that out, and I like to keep you guys up to date on kind of what's happening on a national level. There's an executive summary. It goes over the results of a poll they did. Not surprising, it's been like 9 years in a row. The biggest concern across the country is how are you going to fund water infrastructure. So that's just to let you know, everyone's in the same boat when it comes to what they've got in their distribution system, and here in Maine it's a little different. But again, that's just in there for your FYI if you want to read it and have any questions. And that's it.
Okay, so we got the 2020 financial audit.
There was an electronic copy included in the packet that Sid sent out, and that is the final draft of the audit. We do have 2 hard copies. I didn't bring them here, but I can grab them if anybody is interested in a hard copy. And we are looking for approval of the audit.
Okay. Was there anything out of the ordinary? Or anything of concern
Nope.
to you
some
or Sid?
written they suggested some written SOPs.
Okay.
I make a motion, we approve the audit.
I second that motion.
Anybody have any questions?
There was like a little note in there that said something about a few problems. We're working on solving those problems. Was it some accounting problems? There's that blurb that was in one of the packets.
They wanted a standard SOP for financial accounting, yes.
That's it?
Yep,
So we're on process to do that.
absolutely.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
No, I'm good with it.
Excellent, okay. Everybody
I've
else
got a
good?
copy too.
Yes, yep.
Okay, so we're good? All right, all in favor of accepting it? Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. RFP for legal services.
Yep, you remember last month we opened the bid? We put out there an RFP to 5 firms for project-based legal services. We got one response back from Drummond and Woodson. I think I gave you all electronic copy of this hard copy that I got. And if you've had a chance to look through it, but after we opened them, I did email the person from Drummond and Woodson, told them we would be discussing this at this trustee meeting. So here we are at the trustee meeting, and I don't know if there's any discussion on what to do with this. I guess the proposal that they gave was for doing phase 1 of this project, which is basically familiarizing themselves with the various interlocal agreements we have, and they gave an estimate between $25,000 and $40,000 for doing that.
Okay.
So I don't know if anyone has any comments or any.
25 to
on what to do with
40,000 just to do the research before we even get
Right.
started with any kind of.
Right. It was a 3-phase project. So this would be the first kind of discovery phase, if you will, to familiarize them with the various interlocal agreements we have and how they interact with each other.
Which, if I remember right, I think Jim thought when we asked him ballpark, it would probably be that much to do that. That's not it's a lot of money.
It is, I'm also wondering, if we should be pursuing that yet. If the timing is right, it's a little earlier, not right to pursue that with this that we received from
Yeah.
City of Lewiston, the Exhibit 7A, the certification of city council action.
Yeah.
You've all read this.
Is there a time frame that we need to respond?
To this, no.
Okay.
And Bob, bringing that up.
Date-specific,
To that?
table?
This.
What's
Do we
that?
do a
Do
date-specific
we want a
table?
table to a date
Well,
specific?
the only reason why I think that's might be good on this is because really none of us here are good enough to negotiate
Yeah,
the legal, the legal financial stuff. But this company is, and we want this company if we have to do that. But one more month with the PUC, we all should read this thing, and then we should authorize phase 1. That's what I'm thinking. So date-specific table is what my motion would be. So I motion to date-specific
to be
table.
the next meeting?
the next meeting.
So motion to table to a date specific being the next trustee meeting,
Next regular trustee meeting.
okay?
Second for discussion.
Yeah.
Well, we can't
But why-
discuss it, we can't, if we're doing a table motion, we can't discuss it, but my question is, would that include discussing this result? Can we,
Well, that's its own
continue?
agenda item, correct?
Is that an agenda item?
No,
It is?
I don't see it here.
It's not, but I did have a note, I saw these 2 items tying together, so that's why I put it in there. It wasn't a specific agenda item to talk about the result, but I put it in the packet because I do think that directly relates to whether or not we should move ahead at this time with
Not that
this.
I'm against tabling, we can't discuss that portion, but I would hope that we can talk about.
Do
the
we want to
result.
withdraw this
Well,
table
no,
motion?
I still want the table motion because I look at that as them telling us what we should be doing.
Problem is, we can't talk about it if you put a table
Once
motion.
you
Yeah.
have the table motion, we can't even talk about this result,
I mean,
if that's part.
Till next meeting.
Unless open session, somebody can bring it up in open session.
So we have a motion to table and a second.
no,
Do we have a motion?
No.
yes.
You had a motion,
but no second.
no second.
No
No
second,
Discussion,
okay.
I apologize.
So
Incorrect.
So the motion is not seconded, so it fails.
Okay.
Okay. So that brings us to, we're still on the RFP for legal,
No, don't
so
talk about it.
let's discuss
Now we
it.
can talk
So we need
about.
don't we need a motion to talk about it then?
No, it's
No,
on the
it's
agenda.
on the agenda,
This
so
is
let's.
part of it, this is part of that RFP.
I didn't see it on the agenda, that's why.
Yeah, so I would say this falls under
RFP for
that.
legal services, but not the Lewiston letter. The
So
Lewiston
is it-
letter's not on there.
Well, you're right, it is not, and, yeah, correct.
So we wanna talk about the RFP?
Well, yes, and I would say if we have tabled the RFP till next, and that means we can't talk about this, then that means if we don't table it, then we can talk about this. That's how I would,
That's what I interpreted.
okay.
Suspend the rules and get that on the agenda as well.
Now, we can talk about this and then you can.
Well,
you
we
can-
could, we could also talk about this resolution, because that was filed under their PUC response, which is mentioned under the 10-person complaint. So we can bring up this resolution as
That's
part of
fair.
the 10-person
That's
complaint.
fair. All right.
Okay, that's
So we can
good.
go back to
That's
the.
how I had it
Yeah.
listed in my memo.
So, if we table this, that means we can still,
Correct.
we
Yep.
can
When
still
we
talk
get to the
about this.
10% complaint. right?
So, the question is, do we want to discuss this RFP any further? Is there any, I tend to agree that until we have had a chance to discuss this, and we know what the PUC complaint and our response, that I agree with you, Bob, that it's a little early to start engaging.
Well, I have to think we have to consider 25 to 40 is only for them to understand what Jim Frost already understands.
Mhm.
True.
And then they're gonna draw conclusions from it, my assumption is, and give us some ideas.
But we're doing this to get an unbiased, or
Right, so we're
separate-
spending that kind of, now we're not even going to having them talk to these folks yet, which that could be another 10 to 20 to 30, 40, 50,
Litigation.
who knows?
Yes.
So I guess what we gotta be careful of is that we prepared to get down the road of, not 40, but 60, 80, $100,000 to do this. Because if it's 25 to 40, just for them to research our agreements, I can't imagine what it'd be like for them to do something about those agreements.
Double or more?
I don't know, that's what I.
So we know that just the UV plant was $2.4 million and $400,000 a year. That's what we're talking about.
We need a good firm. We do need the firm.
and if you put it off.
When do we engage them?
The
though?
question, did you have an unbiased review independently?
Yeah.
Did you put it out there and pay, unfortunately, associated with paying for doing it right, you have to.
Does anybody here feel like they need to read that RFP anymore? Is there a benefit to waiting until next month?
I've read it. It looks good to me. I was just giving everyone an extra 30 days of my proposal.
I mean, my concern, I breezed through it, I mean, obviously I don't understand all of it, but I do understand what we're asking to do. We're going down a road, it's gonna be $100,000 before we're done, if we continue that. If this happens, which we can't talk about, or can we? I guess we can, because it can go in either way. But if we can get this negotiation going somehow, that could save a lot of that legal stuff. That's my feeling, is that if we get agreement from the other side to make changes in these agreements, we can work with our current attorney or with these folks to help draft the new agreements and put the money there, as opposed to having them have to learn all about how they interact and spend all that money there. But again,
I mean, this is pretty much what we had wanted, was for them to come to the table.
that's,
And
this is
now
what we were all
they're coming
fighting
to the
for, was
table.
to get them to come
Finally.
to the table.
That's right.
So I was thinking that we might table it, only to find out if we get from, and we're gonna talk about this later, what's the next step and where's it going? Because if Lewiston ignores this and we ignore it, then this is a worthless piece of paper.
Anybody else have input?
But they had a choice, I understand, last time. It was
They
either
did.
to agree to do it, or remember there was refuse without bias, what was the word they
No,
used?
that was not had to do with this, that had to do with the 10-person complaint.
Yeah, and
But
they
they-
had to be a yes or a no, and
So their answer before was, we like the agreements where they are, we're not talking. Now they've been told by the city council to come to the table and talk to us. So it'd be nice to have a firm like this on our side to
Absolutely.
help us. But do we think we need to spend the $40,000 to have them understand all our agreements before we do this?
Yes.
Jim Frost has already done this with us, so he's
He's gonna
familiar
go
with
to
it.
the next
Yeah.
month, and then we'll wait the next month, and then say, after that, it's in our interest to
That's
wait.
What
We will
provisions
wait.
do we have to cancel,
We don't
you
know,
know, the
that's why we're,
representation?
You mean with,
Yeah,
with some?
well-
We haven't engaged anything with them yet.
Is
so-
there a
no,
retainer?
if we were to go ahead, would there be a retainer? What would the terms be if the situation completely blows up and changes?
Well, the PUC makes a decision for us. There's all kinds of things that could happen.
Yeah.
Well, maybe figure, what is the goal? We want them to agree to,
Make
you know,
changes.
63.
Get it back.
Whatever it is.
Right.
Right.
So if you can make that goal, if that's the only goal, if you can make that goal without spending $100,000
Well, that's
on,
my point is, if they said, yeah, you know, there's enough pressures on us.
unless there's
we wanna-
something else
We want
in
to
there.
write these, then we hire these people, somebody else to write the agreements, so that it says apportionment and checked monthly and how we want it to be in there. If they go along with it, then we've got what we've been fighting for all this time.
Our goal is to get them to the table, they're coming to the table.
Right.
Right now, there's no, we have no money involved in the RFP.
No.
Other than the cost for Jim Frost to draft the RFP for us, but you're right. We don't
So-
have any huge
Right.
investment in that right now.
If we can talk about this in that next item,
Yep.
then I would be willing to make the motion to table this decision till the next regular Water District Trustees meeting.
That would be my recommendation as well.
And then we have time to see what we can do with this
that
before
what I said?
we retain an attorney.
Yeah, but we've talked about it first.
Is that a motion? Is that a
Well,
motion?
we can talk.
Hold on, before we
After-
make a motion, does anyone else, KC, Bob, anybody else have any input about,
I just have a
About-
technical question. Do we need a motion to go into executive session?
We really can't without it being on the.
it's not on the agenda?
100% not
Right.
possible?
Right.
I would agree to table then until we can talk about this in executive session, because what we're doing is not, this is beyond the public. This is outside of our agenda item, and I think we should talk about it in a different way another time.
Yeah, maybe talking about this should be the executive session too, I don't know.
Could be. I think these are all things that we have to think about. We can't just, we're not debating this right now. That's my opinion. Anybody else? Sorry.
I would be in favor of you know, maybe modifying my motion to say that we're gonna table this to that date, next Water District Trustees meeting.
22nd, I think.
And 22nd.
Careful, it's the fourth Wednesday, I think.
And have it as an executive session to also discuss the resolve in simultaneously with that.
That means that takes the resolve off the,
Yeah, because I really, now that I think about it, I don't think we should be talking any kind of strategy without an executive
We
session.
should be talking to anybody without somebody like that behind us.
Well, that's true too, but we also, I think we need to, before we talk to them, we need to decide what direction this is going in. The only thing I
So
was.
you don't want to discuss that till next
The
month?
only thing I was gonna find out was,
I don't want to
This
put it
was-
off, but
well, the only thing I wanna talk about this was, we taking the first step, we gotta start the negotiation process. And
They
how-
started the first step though with that, right? I
They
mean,
directed their staff to contact us.
No, Sid,
Sid, right.
yeah. I mean,
we
what
want.
you
did
said.
they contact you?
well, he
Well,
said,
are we discussing this or are we tabling
Yeah.
it?
he's a
I'm not gonna
professional
motion. I'm not gonna
negotiator. I
second,
mean,
so it's.
Definitely a question.
The
Did they
tabling
contact
motion
you?
is
Because
failed
that would
again.
change the direction that we would go. Did they, I mean, that's definitely pertinent.
Well,
so the
If you
tabling
want-
motion failed, so this is still, we're still
Right,
discussing
yep.
this.
Yep.
We're discussing the RFP for legal services, and the question was, have they contacted you to start the negotiation? Because this says the negotiation should be with you.
yes, if you want to discuss that now, yes, they have.
Okay, okay.
Let me see, as a matter of fact,
Hold on, before we do, we've discussed this, we
Yeah.
actually don't have to act on it. There's no requirement for us to do anything, we've discussed
Yeah, we really don't
that.
have
So
to table
let's,
it, we can just.
we just leave it.
Yeah.
And let's, now we've left that, we're now gonna move on.
Which,
We're gonna move on, we're gonna the review the bylaws, the protection. And then we've got, is this,
No, the Lewiston cost share was added after the RFP based on
right,
suspended
just the
rules.
Lewiston cost share, so now this item would come up.
That's
All
right.
right, so now we're on to discussion of this item. Okay,
So,
and now.
so in your packet, you've all read the resolution that the city of Lewiston put forward.
Mhm.
I got an email just today from Marianne Brenchick, who is the Public Services Director for Lewiston. Hi Sid, Heather Hunter is the interim city manager for Lewiston. In accordance with the resolution, they authorized the city manager, the Public Services Director, and/or Assistant Public Services Director, who is Kevin Gagne. So I got just an email just today. Heather, Kevin, and I would like to meet with you in early September to hear about the specific agreements and sections of those agreements that your board is questioning. You are very welcome to invite any representatives that you think would be helpful in this conversation. Again, we need a starting point to begin. We will be available to meet in your conference room at AWD or at Public Works, whatever works best for you. Let me know a few dates, times that work for you after Labor Day. So that's the email I got today. So that's the invitation that we got, so.
So without discussing any strategy, I guess our next point is, do we start the meetings before we have legal counsel? And
Fact finding is fine, I would think, but legal counsel will take time, obviously.
So, up until today, we did not know that they were willing to meet with us.
Right.
And now they're saying next week, week after next.
Week after next, yeah,
Meet.
Labor Day,
All right,
sometime after Labor Day.
no, how about next week?
Well, no, the resolution that they passed.
Exactly.
Well,
This is August 4th, so.
All
Well,
right.
they know when we meet.
Yeah, but that was the August 4th city council meeting for them. But
Right.
they emailed Sid today.
So when do, we
Right.
had this in our packet.
Today or
They
yesterday?
emailed him
this
today.
came in today. As a result, you know, to move forward the resolution that was passed to meet and discuss.
So, my thought would be that we would respond to them saying, thank you, we would love to sit down and meet with you. At this point, that's short notice, seeing as we've asked for the last year almost, and they rejected us. We have to have some time to evaluate exactly what we want to talk about specifically, and how we're going to
Well, I wouldn't
represent
say
ourselves.
that.
Or we want to discuss how
Is this
who
an
and how we're.
executive session item, or, because anyone can watch the video?
Right.
It's fine, I mean, it is what it is,
Yeah.
we're just saying it's too soon for us to.
Making that first meeting is not necessarily executive session, it's a strategy that we use, which I guess we need to have our next meeting to talk about that strategy.
Do we want to sit down with them next week or the week after Labor Day? And
We
find
should
out what
for-
they're,
I think we should for fact finding, just to review facts,
Well, again, I think we have to wait.
without decision. There's no, do this, we request this, it's, they talked about meeting to review a list of items, so let's talk about the list of items.
There's not a single person here that has the expertise to handle this, besides those people right there.
That's where we're between a rock and a hard place, because, you know, I feel when we get into the negotiations, I know when I have a blanket statement that I would make to them if I was in that meeting, and I won't talk about that now, we need to do that in executive session. But there's gotta be a strategy, and if it's gonna have to wait till we have somebody that's spent the money to understand all of our agreements, then how long is that gonna take? 3 months, 4 months?
Exactly.
Before we even acknowledge this. And I think we need to acknowledge this sooner if not later in some degree.
So you're saying wait a month?
I'm not saying anything, I'm
Well,
asking.
that was your initial suggestion.
I wouldn't have a problem
It's kinda
waiting until late September or something like that.
Well, all I'm commenting on is they've said no up until this month, and now they want to have us meet right away. This is the first, this meeting is the first that we've discussed it. And if we want to meet with them, I think we're gonna have to do something that we've got to decide what's our goal of the meeting.
I'd recommend that we set a meeting for late September, but that we set either an executive session, either a special one, or the one at the next meeting.
No, a meeting, this group meeting,
Yes.
Right,
I'm
but we set a meeting for Sid to meet with them and representatives from here, maybe we can decide who's gonna be the representatives. And
After
set
our
it
next
for late
meeting.
September.
Yeah,
And then
after our next meeting.
Well, I wanna give them some notice, so if we made it
That's it.
1st of October, knowing that we have a meeting in between, then we can have a chance to have an executive session and talk about what our steps are going forward. But still have the meeting, but have this group help decide what we're gonna do and how, that first step. Who's gonna do it and how's it gonna work? And then if we need to get council involved, we do, but in the meantime, I don't wanna slow this down and say, well, we'll see you in 6 months when we talk to legal counsel.
Yeah,
'Cause
right.
they're gonna
I
say,
agree.
wait a minute, you guys supposed.
I like that.
You know,
I like that, to just put it back from the beginning of September to the end of September after our next meeting.
but give them notice now so that,
Yes.
you know, give them some
Set
notice.
that
Don't
time,
say a
yeah.
week, well, we wanna meet that week. Well, you know, maybe we can't. So if we tell them right away, we want it on a certain date in late September, early October. And then we have time in the interim to talk about what that meeting, that first meeting is gonna be involving.
I like that,
You know, we need a window, not just a,
yeah.
Yeah, and I know what I'd like to do, it's a pretty simple, basic statement, and if that meeting goes bad, we'll need to definitely get some people involved.
Yeah.
I have a very basic idea to start things.
So then, that I.
Which we can talk about in executive session.
Well, we have to talk
Next
about
meeting.
executive
So we're
session.
gonna make this an executive session item for next meeting, and then we'll discuss in more detail at that point, but, so we're authorizing a motion to authorize Sid
So arrange a meeting for late September, early October.
Pending.
And
to
then
discuss as they requested.
the response, not tell them what, okay, we'd like to meet on this day, not elaborating what we want to talk about, because it's really not a
Yeah.
good idea.
Responding to this.
Responding to their email, responding to this, okay, in regards to that resolve, we'd like to meet with you and discuss it, our first meeting on, whatever makes sense for them, late September, early October.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Jason. Does anyone want to discuss this
And then
anymore?
we should also maybe decide between now and then who will represent the district.
that's the only thing I was gonna bring up, was
Okay.
who's gonna work with
So the
Sid.
motion is to authorize Sid
To make the meeting.
to make the meeting, to set the meeting
Yeah.
with, as they requested,
That's correct.
for after our next meeting, late September, early October. And that's it.
That's it for that part of it, and then after the.
That's
we
the
need to talk
motion,
about-
so it's a
yeah.
second.
And then either between now or at our next
Second by
meeting,
Jason.
Yeah, that's second, so we can vote on that.
Second by Jason. Any more discussion? We're gonna need to determine who's gonna do that, but we can do that in another motion. Any other problem? Anybody have any issue with that? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Okay, 601. Okay. So in that executive session, that's gonna be on the next, but on the next agenda item, we will also talk about who is going to represent us.
We can talk about who's gonna represent, and then, and also maybe talk more about that RFP and what the direction might be initially. I mean, we talked about the whole scope of it, but if we have to wait 6 months for them to understand all our agreements, I don't know if that's
Yeah,
gonna
let's,
work.
so.
I mean, I want them to, I'm not saying that we should.
Did they give a time frame as to how long it would take?
That's gonna be an agenda item. I would ask that the executive session be prior to that, the RFP on the agenda. And then we can,
We can vote on the RFP then after we've had the executive session.
right, we can know, and we can move, we can put action forward, whether we wanna table it, whether we wanna act on it, whether we wanna reject it, whatever we wanna do at that point. We'll know, okay. I think that's good, so we're moved on,
Does that work? And Sid, you can arrange for that meeting.
okay, so good. Sid's good, he's gonna set up a time for us, all right? And then can you follow up and just let us know as soon as possible when you get that appointment, when that appointment's been set? Thank you,
So
please.
just to finish up the RFP, should we also have Sid notify them, let them know that we're gonna be
So,
handling
yeah,
it?
you wanna make a motion,
Yeah, I'll motion that we also respond to Drummond and Woodson, and let them know that at our next meeting, we're gonna be finalizing legal
Well-
services.
yeah, we'll be able to give them an update on their RFP after next meeting.
Yeah.
You don't need a motion for that.
We don't need
It's
a
not
motion.
finalized, but discuss
But
it.
a motion to contact them is, you're gonna contact them, or we're just gonna put them on the
Just update
list
them.
for a month?
Just to give them an update that we're putting it off for a month based on based on the PUC and
Yep.
things like that.
Okay.
Okay, that's good,
Okay.
thank you. I don't even think we need a motion for that.
No.
No, so we'll just ask you, Sid, to do that. Thank you. All right. That moves us to the review of the bylaws.
Yes, I've got, at the last meeting, it was approved to contact Jim Pross and get a suggested process for amending the bylaws. I was going to have it in the packet, it did not get done in time. Jim was very busy, he's our full-time employee now, so he didn't have time to get to this in time to get it in the packet, but I'll pass these around. It's quite detailed, so without it being in the packet, it's gonna take some time to get through that and
It was
see everything
emailed
he's
out, wasn't it?
suggesting.
Ken sent it out.
I sent it out after the chat.
This afternoon.
Oh, okay, yeah, I saw it on email, I don't remember what it.
Do we have a record, I think we talked about this last week, do we have a record of our previous interactions with Jim regarding this topic?
With
With Jim.
Jim.
We talked about it last time, I said we had started this process, and I said, what is, and I thought you said you'd get back to me, I could be wrong. What did we do previously with Jim on this? I just want to be sure we're not, I mean, obviously it's done, so it doesn't really matter at this point, but if we've done this before and the process is different, I want to know.
Well, I think this one is, well, you haven't seen it yet, but this one is more
Updated.
comprehensive, I think.
Okay.
Was this done before?
No.
Something was done before,
So
and
the last
Well,
time this was
Mary- well-
reviewed was 15 years ago. And
No,
now,
2006.
what we're talking about
that's
was,
15 years.
Last year.
what I was talking about was last year. Right.
Right,
What
so
you're talking, you're asking the
I'm saying
process.
15 years ago was the last time it was reviewed. You guys brought it up 2 years ago, when Mary was the president.
Yep.
In order to evaluate this, we put together, you guys put, and then we stopped.
Yeah, we waited we wanted to wait till tomorrow.
For that report to come out for the,
Gotcha.
Yes,
I don't know if it has come out yet, it's supposed
Tomorrow.
to be a
It
July.
does not come out
it should be
tonight.
tomorrow.
All right, so
Mary Sylvester did put together a suggested format for reviewing the bylaws.
did Jim Pross give us input on that process?
Not to my he did.
I'm positive he did.
Okay.
I'll look through the emails, but I'm positive,
He was
because
involved.
everything Mary did was, when there was a process new, she checked it off on Jim, and I'm positive that we had correspondence. I don't know if it was formal.
I did include Mary's suggested review process, and I gave that to Jim to formulate this.
Okay,
Yes,
So-
that was- yeah.
we have one now, it's fine.
I guess my read on what he's got here, there's a lot of good information. To me, I would like it if you could take this and put this into an outline format. I think it's kind of hard to read this in a narrative form
It is.
for a review process. I mean, everything in here I think is good, but as the committee meets, I think it would be good to see this in an outline form, 1, 2, 3, rate A, B, C, write down steps to follow to make sure we don't miss anything as we're going through this.
Steve, I actually
Like that.
gone through the whole thing, and it's all good as Sid says, but this is way beyond a special committee. What I would propose is the same company that did the Lake Auburn study for the city of Auburn, look at this and come back with a quote. Because we're ultimately where the buck stops. We make the decision, but we don't have all the public hearing stuff.
Yeah,
We don't have me, Jason, and who are we gonna add, Kevin, hey, all right, let's go out and let's get this thing done, right, for the city of Auburn,
Well, we don't as a board, I mean, our staff is not
But-
set up for that kind of thing.
If we ask this company, who's already deftly familiar with what's going on, what do you recommend? And then for something the trustees can vote on, oh my God, easy peasy. So it's another 30, 40 grand, but what's at stake here is all the stakeholders. And it's gonna be controversial, and it's gonna be like, all right, oh, did you post the meeting, Jason? Oh, we can't have a meeting now. It's like, we're volunteers.
We're volunteers, that's right. This is a
this-
massive
But
undertaking.
this is good. I agree with Sid. This is good. Now, Sid may not agree with the same company, but the same company has the in-depth knowledge of what their study came out with.
We're talking,
And I don't think everyone's gonna approve swimming. We're not here to change swimming.
It's
like
not
that.
about swimming.
Exactly, it's not about swimming. It's about, can the seaplane land? Can the angler pick up his fish? Can a kayaker step in the water? These are things that need to be changed in this protection for bylaws.
that's not what we're talking about.
We're not talking, what are we talking about?
A review.
Right,
Right, but
Step
we would,
one.
but we would change something, for example, in the bylaws that say human touch can occur.
That's not, so the bylaws say we need to review every 5 years?
and did we do it? We reviewed it, three of
It
us.
wasn't
Mary, you
approved
and
by the
me.
board, it wasn't finalized
No, but
because
we
it
could
wasn't.
give that
approved.
review to a consultant, and they can say, okay, well, these
No.
were their initial.
What's the purpose of the review?
The review was built into the bylaws so that every 5 years, the board that's here can look at it and determine and understand it. So we're not oblivious to what happened 15, 30 years ago. We didn't set it up this way, we follow the process that was set. Every 5 years, we're supposed to review it. There's not one formal review on the record. We need, is
Well,
that correct?
informal review. We have
So-
one informal.
So one informal review, and
Two informal
I tried to
reviews.
get it approved the last time we tabled it. So let's review the document, talk about it, like a subcommittee purpose right now is that we 2 people, 3 people, whatever we approve, review it, present some bullet points to the group. Here's what it is. If we have notes, fine, put them notes. Everybody else might have comments. We might talk about it. Whatever happens after that, vote on the fact that we accept a review and we're done with step 1. That's all that's it. You're getting.
But once you read this process,
Would that process adopt
Yeah,
this?
no. Well, what's the
Sorry
point
to
of doing
interrupt,
it then?
but that wouldn't adopt, because it says in the bylaws, review every 5 years. I'm
For
sorry.
what reason?
Do you want to amend the bylaws
It's all right,
to take that
fine, I
out?
reviewed them and now we move on and that's it.
Exactly.
But we're
Let's
not
take it
allowed
out
to
if you
amend them?
disagree.
We're not allowed to amend them, or we can amend them anytime
We
we
can do
want.
whatever we want.
So the
But it's
what he's
in the
trying to say-
bylaws that we will review every 5 years.
What he's trying to say
Casey
is-
was probably in the group that said, with some foresight, everybody needs to review these bylaws every 5 years.
But nobody
It's just
did
a
it.
way- right, that's a problem.
Well, not formally, but what he's trying to say is the difference between the amendments of it. We can amend it anytime we want. If we want to change something in the bylaws, we can amend it anytime we want. But the review has to happen every 5 years, which is simply a review, separate from the
With some
amendments.
notes.
Right, it's just
No.
forcing you to take a hard look
But
at
And
if we
put
wanna
some
make
notes in and
amendments, that's
just put it
separate.
on the record, here we have some notes, here's what
Right.
happened.
But if we want to make
Do nothing,
amendments,
do something, whatever.
this process would be used if we
After.
wanted to make changes in the bylaws.
But approve a review is what I was talking
Well,
about.
we approve a review, but
So
then-
I'd like to know what Casey thinks. You were here all, I mean, what is this, I mean, it's supposed to be
He'll make the
done.
motion to remove the review. I'm sorry.
I've never seen anybody want to do this in the past. You know, unless you think there's something wrong with the rules as they're working, I don't see going through, you know, meeting after meeting and public hearings and all that stuff.
well, that's a few, yeah.
I personally think they're working pretty well, and I'd like to say, yeah, we've looked at them and they're okay.
All right, I'm just curious, I mean, but
Step 1.
That's kind of
All
what
right.
happened the last time. There was a lot of work done on it, but when they boiled it down.
I mean, 06 or just last year?
No, 2006. And the more you add into it, you know, you can do this, can't do that. And adding more things, the more you add, the more it begs the question, well, what can't you do? If it's
Right.
not in there, then it means you must
Right.
be able to do it.
But you.
And that's why they kept them as they are.
So
You gotta
I might-
read what this says at the
To
top,
give
it says
leeway for
process
making
for
decisions you need to
amending
make.
the bylaws. Now, the review, yeah, we
Okay.
rubber stamp a review,
These
we
are
looked
amended.
at it, we reviewed it. And we, that
But
every
we
5
have-
years.
so
we
we
compare.
have, as
But
a-
this is amending, so.
But
we
as an
want to make a change.
organization, we have all these things written into our documents that we were supposed to do that we never did.
The review process, for example, right?
Like the review process, like on our agreements that say in 2012, this must be done within a year. And no one ever did it. And there's the memorandum of understanding, and no one ever did it. And now we're here, and this is, are we looking to review, amend, what's the point?
Right, if we want to get the review, like Jason's saying, behind us, then the answer is we looked at it and reviewed it. But we also have
So
to
that's
report.
different than amending the
Right, this is
bylaws.
a totally different process, this is the amendment, so if you wanna change it so you can put your foot in the water in Lake Auburn, we gotta go through this process and change, because there are rules in the bylaws that restrict how the lake is used. But reviewing it is nothing, that's a rubber stamp, we looked at it, yeah, we're okay, but I think that this review should say, but we would like to recommend some changes at the bottom of the review. And if this board agrees that we wanna make changes to the bylaws, then we go to this step to make the changes. There's no way you, just like the
Gotcha,
charter
that makes
commission,
sense.
you
Now
can't
I
make a change
understand.
in the charter without doing certain things, well, you can talk about it all you want on a comprehensive plan, that's the review. Now we wanna change the bylaws, that's a different process.
I assumed there was gonna be some proposed changes coming just from the 2 meetings you had. There was a lot of stuff in there.
Right.
A lot of stuff that was gonna be changed.
And
That's
that's-
a group of 2 or 3 trustees
And an
with a
outsider.
couple of opinions, and it said it very clearly in the document, the rest of the board should
Right,
talk
and
about
that's
it.
the next step, Jason.
So
Just
that
like
But
you
what I
said.
didn't wanna have happen is have the rest of the board look at it and say, yeah, it looks good, and those are the new bylaws.
No, that's not gonna happen.
That's not what I'm proposing.
All right, and this is why this was addressed, so we could have if it was
But
going to
is there a
happen.
process for amending the bylaws in the bylaws?
Yes,
And this is it.
This is why we did this.
there already
no,
was a
but is
process,
there-
this
this
is
is-
clarifying,
this
this
is-
is legal opinion about it, but yes, it was in the bylaws.
In the bylaws,
How
you
to amend
have
it, yes.
a process for amending the
All it
bylaws.
says it's going to be reviewed every 5 years, that's the only guidance there is.
No,
There's
there's
nothing in
mention
it?
about amending it.
Yeah, there's a mention about,
It's, we'll have to pull it up to.
Well, it
Trustees
does
make a
say,
change.
there has to be a reasonable opportunity for public involvement.
There are
That- I
guidelines,
understand that.
exactly what you said, there are guidelines how to amend, how and why. Like, you can't just say, I wanna throw it out.
No, and
So
then.
there are guidelines in, I don't have
It
it.
says there has to be a reasonable
Yes.
opportunity for public input.
Jason, you're more familiar with that than I am.
So when we were doing the review, when we come back with a review, I don't understand if there's a procedure within the bylaws for amending the bylaws, why we would throw the review out because we're afraid that something's gonna change when you can't change it.
No, you can't throw what Jason's point is, that we do the review, and at the bottom, we, as a board, decided that we approved this review.
But that's what it sounds like happened, is that we decided not to look at the review at all because we thought that
No,
was
we were
gonna.
waiting for the study
That's
before
what,
we finished.
is that what,
I think that was a mistake
It probably was.
to just say we didn't review it. Because we did review
did,
it, and
yeah.
then we talked about it as a board.
And we didn't.
We got through the whole document.
Semantics.
We actually reviewed it as a special
And you were gonna
committee.
come to the meeting and talk to us about it, and that's when somebody said, oh, wait a minute, let's wait till the study is done. So we haven't had that meeting that talked about the review, that you guys discovered, and then at that meeting, we could also recommend any changes if we think so. Or we could say, we like it, just let it go, and then we will do this process. But if, in the review process, we have to put somewhere in there that says, but we also recommend a few changes. And here's what we recommend.
And we wanted to base those changes on tomorrow, that document.
so,
Well, we want to base the changes on the study that's coming out tomorrow. That's why we were waiting, I guess.
so we have a review that's been done, we have documents that are in place.
2 reviews.
On 2
done.
reviews. So, based on when this study comes out tomorrow, then the people that were doing that did that review, can we take the existing review that's been done and evaluate the study,
Updated.
whatever, and update that review and bring that forward with recommendations? So we need probably a new committee to,
Oh, we
Is
need
that-
to replace Mary at least. Someone has to step up to the plate.
Sid, I'm not sure
Bob?
I understand why this is so, you know, why this is so difficult.
I think it's difficult because amending the bylaws, if there's gonna be any change to the bylaws, I just don't want this organization to trip over itself and have unintended consequences from something that.
Who is here suggesting we amend the bylaws? Is anybody in this room suggesting we amend the bylaws?
We haven't yet.
No,
If that's the case, then I don't have an issue with that.
that's what, we're
Well, what I-
reviewing the bylaws. As it says in the organization, we're supposed to do every 5 years and hasn't been done for
Right.
15
But Steve,
years.
what I was saying is, part of that
Yeah.
review, though, has got to be.
We can make recommendations.
We, as a group, approve this review with these recommendations that may lead us to this. Because
Yeah.
what Casey's talking about, they say, no, we like it just the way it is, everybody signs off on it, and it goes down the road, and it's done. We leave it alone.
Yeah.
And we're done. We're done in an hour.
We could choose as a board to disregard the recommendations. If I understand right, if the review comes in and we say, hey, we think we should put up Auburn swimming hole at the gate of at the intake, and we want to invite, you know,
Have a
the
look.
kindergartners down there to swim,
Toddlers.
to toddlers, to swim at the intake. That's our recommendation after review. We don't have to accept that.
Right.
We can still accept the review and we
Minus the
reject,
change.
minus,
Reject the changes.
minus
Right.
the recommendations.
But if there is something in there that says, we want to change the bylaws relating to bodily contact in the water, then we gotta
The
go through a
amendment process
Right.
would be this.
We can accept the review, and then the next process to get the amendment changed would go this.
We would make a motion to amend the,
Right, but the
Really
review
simple,
stands.
like, just step one is just have it appointed committee, if we want to, let's just forget the committee, let's all review it, point by point, next
well,
time.
the work's already
One
been
or-
done,
A lot of it has.
The work's
Except
already
for
been
tomorrow's report.
except for tomorrow's.
And everyone
report.
should
So
be reading
there's-
that.
I would personally like to see what the two committees, and certainly Mary was on that, you were on it. I'd like to see what that review was
We got it in
about.
our packet last month,
Yeah, so
did you see that?
I would like it presented in a way that's, this is the review, then we have a choice to accept it with the suggestions and say, thank you for your
I
suggestion.
have to object, accept it as a review, step
Yes.
one. Second
Yeah.
step, if there are changes, we'll talk about it separately.
Right,
yes,
right.
Process.
We
So
accept the
that's-
review.
The
Just
changes
don't
are
wanna provide-
recommended.
5 years, done.
Yeah,
Yeah, the recommendations
Right, that's
are,
true.
the changes are
The review is
recommendations
done.
only.
Yes,
Review
that makes
stands,
sense, that
it's
makes
just-
perfect sense, so we
Takes the
don't
pressure
need to
off everyone.
conflate the two. So one is amending the bylaws, one is
Right.
reviewing the
You can
bylaws.
do this anytime.
Right, anytime we decide we want to make an amendment, we can, we don't have to wait.
It's conflicting, so it's
so you need a motion
two separate
to
things.
appoint a committee?
Well, just point of order, do we have to dissolve the previous committee, or is it just appointing
just
another
continue.
committee on top of the existing committee?
I would,
Continue with a
I would
replacement for Mary?
suggest, I would make my motion would be, I would accept the information done by the previous committee, establish a committee to review that and put forward whether or not that stays in, and to evaluate the results of this study, and come forward with their review, with recommendations or not.
Could we just keep the word review? So review what the previous committee has done,
Yep.
and review the new study for the city of Auburn.
Yeah, so we can.
Just gonna
when we have our
review both
meeting,
of those.
Yeah, then we can see if there's anything new in there that changes your mind or whatever, you know.
And come
In a
back,
review,
come back with
a
comments.
review.
Review.
A review with or without recommendations.
Right. And this board should be the one that adds recommendations to the end of the review process, whatever the review is.
Right, it's from the board. so-
Tanya, you wanna read that back?
Committee.
Wasn't really a motion.
No,
No.
we're
I'll
working
make the
it.
motion to review what has been previously done that was not
Accepted.
accepted or finalized, whatever, and finalize a review to present to this board, which will constitute our board's required review.
Yep. And then whatever happens from there.
Yeah,
happens.
do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion on that?
We just asked,
So we'll
like,
get
if
that part
notes,
done.
notes and
Yeah.
comments and opinions are separate from a
And
review.
if we ever go down this
There's a-
road, that'll
there's a
be down the road
logistical-
if we.
This is a different
Completely
procedure,
different.
completely
And
different
notes
from.
and comments, I think, are fine on afterthought
Yeah.
to talk about it,
Okay.
but this
Thank
is a review, which is saying, like, here's the update to the board, this is what it is, fact.
Right.
Good.
Again.
Yep.
So,
So
Anybody
So
else?
let me get this, so any recommendation made that if it's accepted as a review would not mean that anything within that, any recommended change or anything would not be
Fine.
adopted as part of that.
No,
Of course not, because the
no,
review
because you
is
can't
what are the
amend the
facts.
bylaws without going through the amending procedure.
Amendment procedure is completely separate. If we
But-
propose amendments,
If
then
the
we
three,
propose
if
them.
these guys, if whoever's reviewing it says we should have toddler swimming day at the intake, that's our then, and we all think
So
that
if that's in there, then.
Then
the
we
review's
all-
not gonna be
That's an
accepted.
opinion.
so that's
That's
an
a-
opinion. That's a review,
So why
Sid.
would,
So listen,
why would the
listen.
trustees accept it if they don't agree what's in the review?
Sid,
That's
They're just
individual
accepting the
opinions.
review.
accepting the review. Then what we'd have to do is, I want to make a motion to amend the bylaws to allow toddler swimming at the water intake. And then we would have to go through this procedure to make that part of the bylaw.
But that's after we've approved a review, which
But
is
the review's
discussion
done,
of what are the
review
facts.
isn't editing, because that doesn't make sense?
Because
I'm trying to
otherwise, why
understand
would we
why that
put,
doesn't make sense.
why would we put every 5 years it has to be reviewed?
The idea of having a review and saying rubber stamping it every 5 years is ridiculous anyway. You know, there should be comments on this, say, well, we recommend this, recommend that.
We need to
whatever.
add Poland.
But we don't have to take.
We're all gonna agree to do that, right?
But there was, the recommendations were
Taking
not put
drinking water.
forward.
Right, it'd be ridiculous to think that that would be rubber stamped every 5 years.
And again, we're authorizing in this motion a committee, I think, or extending the committee. Opinions are fine, separate from the review of the facts.
Yeah. But- And then those can translate to the further action, which is this, and that's where the public hearings come in and everybody has a chance to chime in on any changes that might occur to the
Right.
bylaws.
And it says right here too, the public needs to be involved in the review, let alone
I
any
mean,
changes.
The reference of a $20 to $24 million filtration plan. Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah.
We'll pay for that tomorrow. You know, seriously, I mean, it needs to be updated. And you'll get some real common sense things that the trustees can pick and pull out and then make a motion.
Yeah.
We all know it's what, 40 to 50
Review
now, right?
changes nothing.
So acceptance of the committee's review only means they're accepting the review, they're not
Facts.
accepting or promoting or making any changes that are suggested.
Right.
Yep.
This has to make the changes. It's a separate process.
It's way above some special committee, really it is. It's a firm, I think.
It's
Well,
kinda
that's a
like-
different story,
Yeah,
but that's
different
a
story.
different
So we
subject.
need one person to replace Mary, or do we have to reauthorize a new committee?
I think the existing committee has already got the work done. I think they can just present what they've got, unless they do think.
I
it's
would
not-
motion that we continue with
Hold on,
the,
we were on
I've already made a
I'm sorry,
motion.
point of order,
Yeah.
Jason made a motion, did we get a
It's been
second?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's been
All right,
seconded.
so you're in discussion.
right, so I would say it would be fine to have the remaining members of that committee. If anybody would like to nominate another person, I would be
Anybody
okay
can
with
be
that too.
involved in anything.
Volunteer.
anything they want to,
Yeah.
yeah.
If anyone else wants to be involved in that process, I think it's great, but if not, then I'm
Staff,
okay with
Tanya?
that.
Sid will be involved anyway. You wanna come do, or? No,
Tanya's-
you're good? Yeah.
Tanya's gonna
Has
say-
anybody got any free time? I mean, a couple of meetings, we'll probably do it in the next 2 months, right? Because we gotta,
Well, the good thing is it should be just a quick review of what was done, and each individually do our homework, and we're just presenting.
Would you grab someone from a different community? Or does it have to be?
Doesn't have to be a board member, doesn't.
Someone from the.
I mean, I think let's get the review behind us, let's put those things forward, let's see what the study says. I don't even know what the study says, I know what people think it says, but we don't know what it says.
Well, we're only gonna use that if something changed in what you guys, we'll all use that study information, because hopefully we'll get a
Yeah.
copy of it, and we'll all use it in our determination.
And if somebody comes forward, I mean, you don't,
Especially when
just
you get to
because you're
this.
on, just because you're not on the review committee, doesn't mean you can't recommend, make
Right,
a
because
motion
the
to
committee is
amend the
I mean, I
bylaws.
can make a motion right now.
Yeah.
We-
Yeah,
That we
anytime.
pursue to.
Yeah, have toddlers swim at the intake.
Toddlers, you're right.
It's a completely separate thing, the
Right.
review's one thing, the amendment's totally different, so.
So no one wants to volunteer?
you mean for the third person?
Then we're authorizing 2 people if no one wants to volunteer, right? Or
I'm okay with that, that's what,
Yeah, because the work has pretty much been done.
This is not, I'm not gonna let this be, I mean, I'm not the chairman of the committee, but I wouldn't.
Well, the work's gonna get
fact
revisited
finding.
with this report tomorrow, so, I mean, it's not like.
I'm
making-
okay with it. Kevin,
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
All right.
Yeah, fine.
Andy?
Call the question.
Bob? Casey? I'm good. I think that's, then
To get
that's,
the review process, and then we're gonna discuss the review process, and obviously,
Yep.
if there's gonna be any recommendations or anything at the end
Separate.
of the review, this board will decide what's gonna be, we accept it with
Yeah,
or
and
without
if-
those
if
recommendations.
someone, one of those recommendations, and it's not a, I mean, we're gonna have to evaluate how the bylaws of our organization, what the vote has to be in order to even be able to
Yeah,
go to the.
If we have to start all over again, if somebody make a motion to
Yeah.
amend the bylaws to
That's
start
right.
this process.
That's right. So, good, I like that, I'm good with that. So let's do that. You two guys, get this study tomorrow, come out with a review,
Get that behind us, so
Get
at least
that
we can get
behind
that
us.
5-year, 10-year.
stamp it.
Yeah,
It's
that's
it's
15
been
year,
reviewed.
whatever.
And these
So
are-
we need a vote. Did
Oh,
we have
yeah,
a second?
all.
Yeah,
we have to do a
second.
vote.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? All opposed? Okay, good,
Best
done.
vote ever.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. Okay, now we are on bonding for capital improvements. We had a workshop, Jason.
Sorry, I missed that.
That's okay. Where there are some options for us to bond replacing pipe as opposed to using cash. I know after that, I certainly am a believer that we should move forward with bonding at least 1 or 2 years worth of pipe.
Can I ask for just a quick overview of the meeting? I apologize for missing, it was,
I need to get, as I understand it, Kevin and I were talking, that the actual cost of money is somewhere around 5%. Is what the cost of our money is, annual cost of money, 5%. We have a bond that's ending at the end of this year, which costs us what, $250,000 a year?
There's one
Thereabouts?
dropping off at the end of the year. Last
So we could, and we need to figure out, and again, we need, the other thing that came out of the workshop is we want to find out if there's in fact going to be additional city streets that are going to be. So the thought that I'd like to see is us moving forward in the process so that we have in place the ability to bond should the opportunity to do additional pipes comes up.
One thing that came up since we had that meeting was the announcement from, and I've got it under the memo, announcement from the main drinking water program from the feds came down $997 million to the state. Of that 997, Governor Mills appropriated 25 million of that. It's a very small percentage, but 25 million of that got appropriated to the main drinking water program to be added to their state revolving loan fund. And over the next 4 years, there's gonna be allotments of 5 million, 5 million, 6 million, 8 million added to the SRF program in the form of principal forgiveness. So I think it makes sense for us to apply, at least apply our pipe CIP program to the SRF program to see if we can get earmarked for some of that money, which includes some principal forgiveness. That's due in October. So I would wholeheartedly endorse us putting together a plan to submit to the SRF to get it in there for October for next year's capital improvement, our pipe replacement program, based upon some of the things that came out of the CIP program Mike talked about. I think that would make a lot of sense. I don't know whether we qualify for it or not, but I think that would be a smart first step, because there's no guarantee that we would get principal forgiveness either, but I think if we put it in there we got it, I think that would be the smartest and cheapest way to go for the next year, and maybe for the next few years. I assume there's gonna be another, the next round that gets appropriated, some more principal forgiveness. If we don't get it this year, maybe we'll get it next year. So I think that would make a lot of sense for us.
is it only principal forgiveness, or?
The amount that's allotted, the extra 5 million is gonna be added to I think there's a total of 34 million in their SRF program. So this 5 million next year of federal investment money is gonna be added to the pot and used as principal forgiveness. Again,
So if
no
we have a
guarantee.
bond, we apply for that, and they forgive our principal.
Yep, there's a potential for it.
So we have bonds.
Big percentage
A
of it.
percentage of the
Yeah.
principal.
Yeah, so whatever the number dollar amount we get, so that's bonds, existing bonds, or?
Just drops it
No,
from
that would be
5%
future.
to less, right, of course.
That, well, if you're granted that, you'd have to get that, it would be a new bond through the bond bank for state revolving loan.
And as I understand it though, the problem with that account is you pay a huge administrative fee.
Yeah.
There
When you
is,
hope that you're gonna get if you get the
Right.
forgiveness and you end up with a very low rate, because you've only paid very little interest. But if you don't get forgiven, you're paying 21 or 22% interest.
and I'd wanna know that up front
Fees.
before, we would know as we apply
So-
for it and get the award, whether or not that would include some principal
Yeah,
forgiveness.
then
If
they
it
find
did,
the
if
rate
that
down.
would equal the cost or more of the admin fee plus the interest rate, then we're
Then-
further.
then-
So we could, there's no reason we can't do both.
Both,
There's no, it's not linear, it can be done in it can be done in concert with each other. We're gonna address that opportunity, but we can also move forward on other opportunities at the same time.
For instance,
Well, there's the other bonding vehicle that we were looking at, Tanya, was through what?
The general resolution.
And that's about a 5 to 6%.
It
depending-
worked out, I think, based on the numbers that were given, which was 4 and change. 4 and change.
Actual cost.
Actual cost of money per year, with fees, it's like 1% plus fees on top.
for the workshop.
Right. Which is 5%, it's cheap.
It's cheap and I like doing things with cash, and I know, this department has prided itself with everything that they've done with cash on hand, but my God, not to take advantage of an interest rate like that. I mean, this interest rate might be gone in a couple of years.
Well, what we found in the meeting was that it was helping to stabilize and give us time to think about future rate increases.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the scenarios, well, you were talking about that one, scenario one, say if we borrowed 1 year's worth of pipe, just 1 year's, and put it in the bank, that we wouldn't need a rate increase until 2041, then it would need a 15% increase, based on, if we just continue 2 miles a year, but we borrowed $1 million to put into our cash flow, and because one of the things that bothers me is we wait till we're low on cash and we gotta raise the rates 15%. If we get low on cash, we raise the rates, low on cash, raise the rate. If we could find how to stabilize it, so we could look 3, 5, 6 years out, and maybe have 5% increases here and there, and another 5%, we can see time out there, we know that we're gonna need a 5% increase in 3 years, not we're gonna need a 15% increase in 3 years.
So not only the bond we're gonna be paying off though, it's all the other expenses for Auburn Water District.
Well-
So it may be more than that, because that's only
Well, this
looking at
includes
this.
all expenses.
That
This is
2 mile
everything.
cap is what concerned me. It was like half again the costs, like $1 million more.
If we bought,
Go for the third mile.
If
Go for the third
we
mile.
go any more than 2 miles a year, the cost of putting in pipe is gonna come at a premium, because it's stretching the resources we have. We'd end up subbing all the work out, we'd end up ahead of the city's construction schedule, which would mean we'd have to pave everything we're digging up.
Theoretically.
Well,
That's theoretically,
Right.
that's if the city doesn't
Yeah, we don't
decide
have
to do
to,
additional
right.
roads, which we.
But at least we would have the
had
money
a
there in
workshop.
case-
And we don't have to do that either. We could say this year we'll go to 3 miles. And this year we bond, and my other scenario is if we wanted to set up a contract with a supplier for 5 years, an extra mile a year for 5, we guarantee you to be the guy for 5 years, if you can give us a price that's reasonable, maybe we can negotiate, I don't know. But we have time to think about that. When we're not looking at rate increase every 3 years, which historically, every 3 years, we go up 15%. Now, that's because we were increasing pipe replacement, I know, but is 2 miles enough? And we already talked about it, 2 miles a year, we're still only replacing like 1.5% of our infrastructure every year. So we replace a pipe every 100 years, or every 80 years rather, is that really what we want to do? Or do we want to replace pipe every 60 years? Or at least get rid of the bad pipe that's in the ground?
Ballpark, it costs ballpark twice per mile of pipe for a contractor as it does for our Auburn Water District workers.
That's what they're saying.
No.
No? Half again?
well, it's the two factors I mentioned. You're getting into streets that aren't being constructed,
Right, so
so
that's
you're taking the whole thing on yourself. That's part of
That's,
it.
Right, it's assumed with, that half again, that twice as much has assumptions attached to it.
Sure, yes.
Yeah, it does.
So
yeah.
if those certain assumptions do not happen, it might not be twice as much, it might be 30% more.
Right.
It might be 20% more, it could be, we could
We
outsource
just
the
don't
whole
do it
thing
if
and
we
have it
find
not.
out that
If
it's-
the city's gonna repave that road anyway, and we outsource it to a contractor, could conceivably not cost us more.
Hey, quick question, you were talking about cash, Tanya's got a nice little graph here. We a couple of years ago thought $1 million was good cash to have at hand. We're still close to 2 million, right?
Yep.
At the end of this construction season, which is just a couple months away, where do you think we're gonna be?
Well, every year that cash on hand does the same trend.
We're
throughout the
gonna
year.
spend, we're gonna spend everything
Right.
that was appropriated under the CIP.
Will we be down at $1.5 million,
So-
down at $1 million?
Ballpark, because where are we gonna end up in cash?
I'm working on forecasting it.
Because that would be good to know, because if we have an
I'm
extra,
just not comfortable.
because then we could use cash like Kevin does,
We
you know?
can, we could also establish a fund balance, like the city does, where you have a certain amount, a rainy day fund of some sort, where you have a fund balance, so that it's not, you know, that's a possibility as well. If we decide that it's gonna be twice as much to do it, it's not worth it, it doesn't make sense, let's create a fund balance instead.
One thing I caution, if you remember from that workshop, one thing that I cautioned against, if you look at our current bond schedule, if we do not take out more bonds, we're gonna be debt-free in 2034. That's not realistic. As you know, if you look at our bond history, we have one-time expenses that come up, and they will continue to come up. And I pointed out some of the things that are gonna be coming up in the future. One thing I am concerned about, if we start taking out too many bonds, is how that's gonna burden us in the outlying years. I'm concerned about reserving our bond capacity for one-time needs, which I know are coming.
What's our bond capacity?
Well,
We haven't figured
what
that
what
out.
I'm saying is, if we don't wanna get too far behind and have incredible bonded debt in the outlying years, because you know that we're gonna have things that come up. That we're gonna be replacing meters in 10 years, talking about building the garage out there.
Unless we
The
budget for
lake,
them.
the lake might need more treatments coming up. God forbid
What
we
is
have
our
to build a
bond,
filter plant.
I'm asking, I understand, what is our bond capacity?
If you look at industry standards, you wanna be below 50%.
And where are we at today?
We're at about 23, 24, somewhere.
And we have a bond dropping off.
When you say industry standards, how does that compare to similar districts? Do you know off the top of your head?
Is that part of the poll you did?
Non-responded, but like that.
We didn't get that number.
And that's one of the other reasons that I would, because that bond, that other bond is dropping off, we're gonna be in a similar position of what we are right now anyway.
But will
At a
that-
cheaper rate.
Will that change our every 3-year spike?
When that drops
Yeah, there's
off,
a-
we're gonna
Those
be able
were,
to put
it
more-
goes-
those were
we're gonna be
incorporated
able to
into
put
the.
more pipe in the
into
ground.
thing,
That's where the money's gonna go if you're not paying the bondage.
Right.
You're gonna put more pipe in the ground.
And that's about 2034, so.
Well, just this year, when bonds dropping off, we're gonna have an extra couple $100,000 to put towards pipe. If we don't go out and bond and,
But that means we do more than 2 miles, we have to have that accelerating up.
We decided we wanted to rebond what we lose though, so we can get the revolving discount, right?
Well, that's a
That
different,
might,
that's
yeah,
a
based
different
upon this
bank.
new information, my new recommendation would be
There we go.
moving ahead to
That's one
apply for
bank.
the SRF.
There's another bank,
Apply and look at it,
that's,
see what happens.
that's one bank. The other bank is offering us 5% cost of money.
And there's no chance of getting it paid off by somebody, but we're okay at 5%, we don't have that high administrative fee.
5% is a very reasonable percentage interest rate.
but if we're doing that to conserve cash on hand, you can't be borrowing money to raise cash on hand. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, if it was 20%, I would agree with you, but it's 5%.
You
And it's-
raise your rates. You're gonna pay money on for putting pipes in the ground.
Are we increasing 5%
If we
to the
don't-
rates? Because we've done that?
No, In fact, with the scenario
No,
of,
it's not. That's the scenario, Jason. You gotta see where,
the scenario of doing
We don't
$1
have to
million
raise the rates.
bond, just because we're gonna do a $1 million bond, is not a required rate increase till 2041. Now, we may want to, because administrative costs, whatever, but in terms of what we know right now, and it would be substantial, that particular one, 16%.
I just wanna know where the 5% goes.
Well,
It's interest.
We could absorb that in our current budget.
And this is through what, the 5%,
Absorb
through
it
what
how?
entity?
Well, because
Through
we,
the-
General resolution,
yeah,
general
I mean,
resolution is
when
part
we
of
look
the
at our,
main bond
we look
thing.
at our revenues, projected
It's just a
revenues,
form
we
of
have,
bond.
we can afford to spend more on that.
There's a lot of different ways to look at this. The assumptions we made when we did this workshop was that we would have an annual 2% increase just because of inflation
Right.
for
Built into
our
the
budget. We assumed a flat revenue moving forward forever, which is probably not reasonable either. We also assumed any bond we took out was a general resolution bond. And the way we did it, and I know you guys did your calculator stuff, came up with some different numbers, but the way we presented this was that the interest that you pay over the life of the bond, assuming a 10-year bond, would be 6.1%. That's just the interest you pay over the life of the bond. We tried to simplify the scenario.
but you can explain to me
but
what
you
the
can-
6.1% equals.
That's what it is. It's the interest you pay in totality over the life
Then
of the
that's
bond.
even better.
That's the assumption we made for that, and that's what it comes out to. Given today's
doesn't-
interest rate
it doesn't-
for
no,
a
it's not
general
right.
resolution bond, well, that's, I don't know.
Now, if we don't increase it, just in all fairness, if we
In a
don't,
10-year bond?
Yep,
if we
So
don't,
if you pay 6%, at the end, the total that you pay is, so if you borrow $100.
we did it.
and-
The number
Sid,
we
excuse
used
me,
was in
Sid, I'm
reverse.
talking. If you pay if you borrow $100, and at the end of 10 years, you've paid $106, that's what you're saying.
Over the life of the bond, that's what the general resolution bond was
So-
doing for us.
Again, what you're suggesting is that we would borrow $100, and at the end of 10 years, we would pay back $106.
Annual.
In interest fees, yes.
$6 in interest fees.
No, it's $6 every year.
That's not what he's
Well,
saying,
that was-
Casey.
Isn't that,
We got the amortization schedule from the bond bank, we printed it right out, it was,
It's, so at the end of 10 years, we will have paid,
no,
it's,
Yeah, that's,
yeah, you misunderstood.
no, are we paying 6% a year, or are we paying 6% at the end of the 10 years? Because the other one you're saying was, it's, what is the APR?
it was over the life of the bond.
Correct.
That's what it came out to.
So what's the total interest paid at the end of the?
61,000 on $1 million.
See, that doesn't make
Sign
sense.
me
to
up.
me.
Right.
That's given today's 1%
That sounds
rate.
more.
Well, that's 1% interest rate, though.
That's
Oh,
less
okay,
than,
that's 1%.
It's 1%, I mean, if,
That's not at 6%, at 6% it's 60,000 a year, and then it drops and gets lower and lower as you pay down your debt.
so again, my point is, if that's the case, it's a
If you could
no-brainer.
get it that cheap, but like you said, we're paying 4% right now. I don't know what it is after we've gone to the bond bank and we've paid there, even though the prime rate or whatever rate may be 1%, the city of Auburn's paying probably 3% right now.
well, Tony, it was 1%, right? Wasn't it?
But there are fees on top of that,
But then
or there are
there's fees
fees
you
on
can
top
go-
of
No,
that.
not on the general resolution bond.
There's no fees.
Not no, you don't have the admin fees for the general resolution.
On general resolution, there's no fees.
But
Why would we not do it?
If those numbers are right.
Yeah, right,
That's-
they're right, but we're still increasing to pay that interest. But we're getting ahead of it. Right? That's the,
No.
Yeah.
We're
Well-
getting the money in advance.
that's what I mean. That's
Where
what I
where
mean.
it becomes,
We're getting
if we
ahead of
do
it.
it,
We're
if we do
getting
a one-shot
some more pipe
bond,
earlier
it's
instead of
not
waiting.
gonna be a big deal. If you do, if you want to increase to 3 miles, you're taking out a much larger bond, like every year, to do that extra 3 miles.
This is where the
that
problem
extra
came in,
mile.
is
And
over
that's,
the third
that's
mile.
where you get into.
That's where you get
Right.
pretty large numbers. In all fairness, if we didn't do anything and we status quo, according to our chart, every 5 years we'd have to go up 5%. If we didn't increase our amount of pipe.
And again, that's
around,
paying out of cash.
And that's paying out of cash, no bonding. There's projected a rate increase of 5% every 5 years. without increasing anything.
And
Status
so,
quo.
and so we'd be increasing the pipe in perpetuity, whereas if we take out a bond, you just got it for the year that you're paying the bond.
See, now you build a garage.
If inflation is 2% and we're paying 1%, we're making 1%.
Yeah, but I don't think
If
it
it's
actually
upfront.
costs us 1% when we're all done. I think that's a misnomer. We saw what.
Again, so we asked for an evaluation of what the cost of the money would be. And after all of this work, we still can't determine what the cost of the money would be.
Well,
It doesn't
I've
seem
got
that,
it 5%.
is it 1% or is it 6%? Is it 4%?
I don't know what
Is it
everybody's
5%?
saying, but I know that it's gonna cost us $90,000 a year to debt service $1 million. Now, I don't know where the numbers are coming in.
Right,
But it's
that makes
$90,000
sense.
a year to pay it back and pay the interest on $1 million. It's $90,000 a year.
19,000.
Well, that includes your principal
that
payment.
includes-
That's
It's like a
principal.
mortgage.
That's principal and interest.
Right.
That's what they figure about nine, and it's on a scale where you pay more principal than interest as you're
Yeah,
paying it down.
right.
So your payment is about $90,000 a year.
Right, and we just need to know what is the,
Per
what is
million.
what is the VIG and what is the principal payment?
Now, what
of
the
that?
actual percentage of interest is, and after you've gone and had the bond council.
But if we
and
know
you've
what
sold
those-
the bonds and you get their
We can
cut,
figure out what it is if we know if it's 90,000 per million, what is the breakdown of principal and interest on that payment?
And initially, it's probably more like the 60,000 interest, and then the
I
rest is
understand-
principal.
Right, and like a mortgage,
And
it's
then every
90,
year it
10.
changes.
But if you're saying at the end of 10 years, we've only paid $61,000 in interest on $1 million, that's,
That doesn't make sense.
It's not,
Does
that's
not
not
make
true,
sense.
that can't be true. That can't be accurate.
That's $6,000 a year on $1 million. That's the interest rate. You borrow $1 million, it's $6,000 a year.
I see this and I see more and more. Let's just raise the rates periodically and pay for it out of cash.
Well,
Think of all the feet of pipe we can get out of this
If I can't
$90,000.
get this point across good enough, then I will just drop the
Dave,
whole issue.
can I-
We can't status quo 2 miles a year and do right by our ratepayers when stuff starts collapsing. We got pipe that needs to be replaced, but we can go 2 miles a year and
Can I
hope
ask
to
for
the
the
best.
bond amortization schedule that Tanya said she provided you? It was a
I,
hard
this
copy.
is stuff like, we had a workshop.
I missed it.
I know, we had a workshop though. Like, this is what was supposed to be in the workshop.
Wasn't it in the schedule?
Why
It
can't
wasn't
we keep
provided
the
to
same
us.
23% that we have now? When we retire the bonds, we continue the bonding at that rate? Why can't we just do what we've been doing?
I'm not, I don't understand why not.
The interest cost should have been in that schedule. Was it, are you
I
saying it didn't?
understand what should have been in the schedule.
Was it not there?
No, that's what we got.
That's what you're talking about, Tanya?
Well, this
What did
just
you give to
shows
Steve
the
that,
projection.
I just want to see the amortization schedule.
I have it on my desk.
But we didn't get the amortization schedule in the workshop.
What?
Do you have it?
I thought you said you gave me to.
I did, I went and got it and gave it to him.
Right, then you took it, right, but that
Oh,
wasn't part of the.
It wasn't part of,
If you could you provide us with the
Absolutely.
amortization schedule?
Yeah.
That'd be-
Because that's what you're asking. You're asking what is the cost of doing this?
Right,
And it's in that schedule.
That will show the interest. and
That's
principal
right, and
payments
that- what
each
I'm-
month.
and they did.
that's, right, but that wasn't in the work, but that wasn't what we did in the workshop.
yeah, let's.
We
get
we
that.
had,
We
we
need to
had
know
the
the real cost of
the
the money.
information we gave you
We
was
need to
correct,
know
and
the
we have
cost
to
of the
have the
money. That was the
backup
point
data
of the
for it.
workshop, and was to find out how much does it cost us to bond the money, and we still don't know.
Do you have that schedule right now, Tanya? Let's grab it and
Can you
pass it
make
out.
copies of that, please?
Sure.
Because I'm with, the 61,000 just didn't make sense.
No.
I'm like,
That's the numbers we were given.
So that's why we went and
Yeah,
grabbed the
I don't think
amortization.
they gave you the right numbers.
Right,
It
so
didn't make sense.
my
It just
cons-
doesn't make, there's no way they could give you $1 million and only charge you $61,000 at the end of 10 years.
That's why we didn't pursue, I think that's why we
But
didn't
that
pursue the
doesn't make
inspection
sense to you
anymore.
either, does it? Sid, you've had a mortgage before, that's not
That's-
how it works.
That's the number we were given from the bond bank. I'm not
I think
gonna,
he's
I'm not
screwed
gonna
up.
argue with them
Can we
about
just
it.
calculate it?
Yeah.
Let's just assume 2%.
Well, we know it's 1%, so, I mean, you can, just Google
But
it.
if
But the city's paying 3 or something
Yeah,
like that.
It's, there's gonna be fees.
And then there's.
Fine, just assume 2.
And
I
that's
just
where
want to
you
know the
get that-
rough cost.
That's where you get
And
that.
what, are we passing it on in rate increases? More regularly?
it has to be passed on to the customers, but that's where the money's gonna
But
come
what you have
from.
to understand is if we're spending $1 million a year to bond, to put pipe in the ground in cash, and we instead borrow it, now we still have the $1 million. So in 10 years, we can use the money to pay off the $1 million bond or thereabouts. And still, every year, we get another $1 million added to the capital budget, another million, but it's not being put in the ground, we're borrowing it.
That cost
So
doesn't
now that
go away, I'm
swells-
just, it's an elementary question, the cost doesn't disappear. I don't wanna raise.
No, it
rates.
doesn't disappear. What it does is it gives us options. Now we have enough cash, we can look and say, we need to have a 3% increase next year, because what's going on?
But cash doesn't stay, it's called future value of money and present value of cash, right?
Yeah.
Cash isn't the same amount today as it is tomorrow.
Right, because of
So
inflation.
Steve,
Right.
okay? Okay, if you had a mortgage, this is on a bank,
Yeah, you did that, you did.
Yes.
okay?
And we came up with 90, I said it's 87,000, right?
87,000, I told you,
At
90,000.
4%.
The total interest paid is $51,249 over 10 years,
At 1%.
at 1%.
At 1%.
If that's all we're getting, but there's fees on that when the amortization schedule.
Well,
Yeah,
they were at
I heard
61, so
5%.
ten- which
So
is
now we're talking
$10,000, that would be right.
The report was 6.1.
Thank you. Yep.
The what was?
With
The
the
report was
fees.
6.1 with the fees.
Right.
Thank you.
It's 6.1 with
Just
the
has
fees.
like
Which is 61.
Right.
60.
61,000.
Per year.
No,
No,
that's
total.
total,
Total.
Steve.
Right, but,
Well, if
Over
that's the
10 years.
case, I'm like, it's a
Sign me
no-brainer.
up.
Right.
Right?
It's $6,000 a year.
It sounds too good to be true.
Well, I would definitely
Yeah.
double check,
It
make
sounds too good to be
sure,
true.
Yeah.
make a
Oh, well,
phone
then
call, and
let's
make
skip
sure,
the,
is
let's not do it
this,
then.
is this what? But, holy smokes.
Right.
that is-
Everyone have it now?
I don't have it.
at
Can
1%,
you pass that down?
that is
There's
correct.
two different ones there, Kevin.
But
There's
we
a $1
can't-
million.
We
and
can't
$3
be
million.
fooled by 1% as being the rate we're gonna pay when we go to the money.
That's,
Right.
this is
It's gonna be
the
5
chart we were given at the time we
Right,
originally.
and that's true for a 1%, but doesn't add in, every bond bank's different. Your credit rating determines what your fees are.
I'm not saying it's gonna be that more, that's the number we were given and the number we based
If
it
you got a
on.
good bond rating,
But
you'll
at
get a
1%,
favorable rate.
it's $51,000.
Yes.
A year.
That's,
So it's
that's,
61,000, adding, that's with the fees and all of that stuff, that would, 10 grand, sounds like about right.
Is it all at once, or is it annually drawing from it?
And
Because
you make an annual payment.
No, I mean, the funds that
No,
we, yeah,
Steve,
you mentioned, the cost of, future cost of money.
Look alike to the not.
So are we getting it all, like, upfront, all at once,
So,
and then
Thank you.
we're foregoing the inflation costs over time?
so if we're looking at the
Right, I just-
first page,
Is
it
that
says
the-
100, principal is $100,000. On 11/1/22, are we all seeing?
Yeah.
Well, you want to look at it 3 miles or 2 miles?
2.
2. Good.
all we did, Steve, is look at the bottom, you took $1 million out, the interest you paid over the life of that is 61,000. Just to cut to the chase, that's what we based this on.
Right. And that is based on 1%, that's correct. But we know we can't get 1%.
Well, that's what they gave
I
us.
know. It's
I can't argue with what they
Yeah.
gave us.
Estimated
But it
for borrowing
starts at
at 1%.
.55, and the interest keeps going up.
Over the, it changes every year, but the average is a 1%.
And this is the one though that has all the other fees though, right? The main municipal.
No,
contract,
no, this one is the general resolution bond.
Okay, so we could go through them, and if we could get 1% interest, then, you know.
If I call them tomorrow, I don't know if it's gonna be 1 or if it's gonna be 3, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But at the time we did this analysis, this is the number we used, this is the number they gave us.
Based off our bond rating.
Yeah, so that's, if there's no other fees, that's fabulous, and,
Yeah.
I mean, we should start making arrangements, at least do something to
Yes.
stabilize our cash flow. And understand the stabilization of cash flow on this chart, it shows that we don't have to have a rating increase for 2041, because we stabilized our cash.
Correct.
So that's good for rate payments, isn't
Right.
it?
But that's not realistic, like, we'd still do it like a inflation?
No, we figured 2%. In this number here was a 2% increase in the cost of.
So nothing beyond that?
And that's not any growth in our community where we add customers.
Raising your rates to cover your.
Or we pay less for watershed protection, it's all in there.
Pay as you go is cheaper than anything.
Right, but at $61,000, you don't have to raise your rates,
You're not getting that.
you know?
You're not getting that.
Right, and if we don't, then, okay.
But $200,000.
And you
As it was presented
10
at a
years.
1%,
raise your rates enough to cover 2.5 miles and pay as you go for what you know you're gonna spend. You got one-time expenses coming up, and you may have to bond something, you bond that, but you do that on surprise stuff, you don't do it on what you know you're gonna pay and put in the ground.
This is true.
You raise your rates to
Are
cover.
we seriously not gonna go above 2 miles? Because I would just make a motion to fund 2.5 miles
So,
for
no,
next year,
I want,
you know?
all right, so I'd like to know what the financial theory is behind not borrowing money. Because that's not, like, no is that an industry standard that you don't borrow money to put pipe in the ground? You're quoting that as this is what you don't do.
I'm saying if you know what you're gonna spend, you need to spend, you get revenue to cover that, and you don't borrow pipes until you have a big pipe that's gonna cost you $2 million project, you don't have the cash for it, then you take that opportunity to bond. But you know you're gonna put 2 miles in the ground, if you know you're gonna put 2.5 miles or 3 miles in the ground, raise your revenue by raising rates to cover what you know you're gonna spend.
But under the current circumstances in principal forgiveness, we need to keep bonding.
If you can get principal forgiveness and it's 10%,
But-
big
Okay.
whoop.
And I recommended we
If-
apply for the
if it's-
SRF money because there might be some
But
possible.
here's
So
the,
moved.
but if you're able
That's
to
what-
bond without, and do the same thing without raising rates, why wouldn't you do that?
Because you're pushing the expenses out over
Yeah,
time.
you are, but it's also an infrastructure that lasts 20 years, or 30, or 40, or 50.
You're pushing it out a little bit, you're improving your cash position. It's not, it doesn't mean, you could be in better financial position doing it this way than doing it that way. I understand your position.
I've said what I
But-
said.
right.
Now, explain again, what happens if we can start depreciating, if we have enough assets, we can depreciate.
But I just wanted, the principle of the concept is that you're not necessarily in better financial health by just paying cash. That principle is not an absolute.
Not when you have an obligation of 30 to 50 miles of bad pipe in the ground. It's not a good situation.
And it doesn't necessarily mean you're making the
I'm not gonna
fiscally
go to debt, but my
prudent
roof is
decision.
leaking. I'm not
That's
gonna
where
fix my
I'm,
roof.
that's where I'm
not
at.
going to
It's
debt. We'll
not,
live with it until I can afford, maybe I can
It's-
afford to fix it.
if I was, if the interest rate was 20%, the prudent would be to not go into debt. But if you're getting 1%, it's virtually free. It's virtually free. $61,000 versus $1 million over 10 years is virtually free money.
It really is. That's why you don't see the rate increase.
So if you can drastically improve your cash position and increase the number of pipe that you're putting in the ground, it's smart finance, smart business to bond it versus pay cash when you have the opportunity to do something like this. Now, if that doesn't turn out to be what the cost is, which
Even if it's 200 though, it does seem to make sense to me. Because you spread that 200,000 over 10 years and it's not,
That's quite a bit.
And you still have,
like, just conceptually,
What a
because
pipe.
we're not getting we're not getting the concept.
but why are we talking about this? Why do we have a 17% rate increase every 3 years?
because, the reason we did that was because we went from 1 mile to 1.5 to 2 miles, so we increased how much we wanted to do, and that forced us, but I look back.
We doubled it.
But I look back, we even every 3,
Are we
4
doing that
years-
next year?
No, I don't know when our next rate increases.
We have an obligation to our ratepayers to not just raise the rates. If there's a way that we can do this and do the same thing without raising the rates on our ratepayers, I'm a ratepayer. To just say, well, we just raised the rates, that's our only option. That's not our only option. We have other options. We are obligated to really seriously look at them and not just say, well, we'll just raise the rates.
Because the money comes from somewhere, I mean, we have to pay that interest.
But Jason, it's $61,000 over 10 years on $1 million. That's $6,000 a year.
But that's for one.
1 year. It also depends on what you want to
Yeah, but
accomplish.
it's a debt.
Right, I mean, that's gonna accomplish, how much does it cost per mile?
That's, if we bond 1 year, we're gonna put it, we're gonna have a 1 year bond, we'll save cash on hand. It's just a philosophy, we can argue until we're blue in the face, it all depends on what philosophy
Again,
this board wants to go with.
Again, yes, it's a philosophy. That one says, we're just gonna raise the rates. And the other one says, because we have other vehicles at our disposal and we have money being dumped into the city of $15 million, that we've already had workshops with the Public Works that are saying, how do we increase the number of streets to repair in our city? There might be an opportunity for us to replace more pipe with the city tearing up the road so it doesn't cost twice as much. And if we're just sitting here like this, and they tear up a street that has old pipe, and we don't do it, because we didn't do our homework and establish a bond so that we have the money, we lost the opportunity.
Is that happening? Like, are we
There's a
missing-
workshop, yes. I sat in the workshop at the city council saying that we're looking at perhaps taking some money out of the CIP because of the $15 million coming in, and we had Dan Goyette talked about these would be the streets that we would do if we're able to allocate these funds.
Is it happening that we are missing opportunities to replace pipe?
No,
We have it in the
No,
past.
Not yet, not yet.
we always evaluate.
He gave me
With
the
a-
list, I've looked at what he wants to do. I know what,
I have a
okay.
feeling like I get a clear answer.
So
So he
is that
says no,
2.5?
that's the only answer I hear.
No, I said we never miss the opportunity to evaluate the pipe in the ground with the streets being redone. Mike has a list of what could be proposed.
They just haven't made the agreement that, yeah, we're gonna do it or not.
Right, but we always,
So we're,
always.
Steve, we're
look
not
at the
missing
pipes.
opportunities.
Correct.
Yeah.
You have a list of potential streets that were,
Additional streets that they may do with
That's
this
right.
money.
right.
If they start accelerating the street, you make a valid point. If they're gonna start
Right, so my
accelerating.
question is just why would we not start the process and evaluating? And this isn't saying we're going, there's no contract sitting on the table that we have to
But
sign.
if the city does this, and does these extra streets, we would say, we don't have enough cash flow to do those streets. Then we would look at taking out a bond,
But
because it's unanticipated.
next year, it could be 4%.
Sure.
I mean, right now, it's,
Probably.
What's the window of the expenditure of the bond money?
2 years.
And that,
What's the mileage of those streets, Mike, do you know?
Oh, 2
They
years.
gave me an additional 2 miles,
Additional 2 miles.
Additional two.
but they may do 1 additional mile, they may do 2
Right.
additional miles.
You're sticking the.
But they haven't made the decision on how many extra miles they're
Just
gonna do.
potential,
All right,
1 to 2.
so,
So start the process, meaning what? That's what I.
that's what this, again. this
Start the
is
process
that-
by all means.
So we've
but
got
not-
no's and people don't wanna do it.
Well, I committed this, I would like authorization to apply for SRF
I
money.
make a motion
That
that
makes sense.
we allow
to me.
Yeah.
Sid to apply for the,
Second that,
That would be something we bond, we'd have to bond SRF money.
And we're not
all in,
agreeing to do it, we're
No,
just
no.
saying
You'll
start
show
the
us
process.
contract and
That's fine.
decide whether we want, if it makes sense or not.
If we get no principal forgiveness, we'd have to decide at that point whether it's still worth going ahead with
I
it.
think we gotta continue the conversation though, because I know, right now, the idea is I wanna pay out cash, I don't want any money. And others are saying, we need the money, we got, like I said, the roof leaking scenario for me is good. You don't have enough, I own my house completely, I'm not gonna go into debt another, and the roof is leaking, you need a new roof, but I'm not going into debt until I can afford to pay with that roof, and 2 years later, you get the money to pay for the roof, but by that time, it's ruined half your house.
And what is the annual cost of that
So
emergency
borrowing
of
money
broken,
sometimes makes sense.
fixing
what I'm
broken
trying to say.
stuff?
We have a lot of broken stuff in the
Interest
ground.
rates this
Not
lot.
many breaks this year, don't jinx it.
How many miles do we have of cast iron,
13.
concrete line, 13 miles of bad, seriously bad
Almost
pipe.
50 miles of cement line.
And 50 miles of cement line pipe that we're gonna sit there and wait till we open a street before we fix.
And what's the average cost of a water main break?
Water main break?
Well, it's
Like, we had a
10
water main break, 10 grand.
10.
plus the inconvenience, plus
Yeah.
the having to boil water, plus all the issues, plus the people saying, what am I getting for my rates? I mean,
The good news is you're gonna have a capital improvement plan within a month that they break out over the next 10 years, how many miles of pipe they recommend you replace each year, and it outlines big projects, like you pointed out, like, it's not always gonna be this price per mile. You've got a 24-inch pipe that goes up over this hill that's over 100 years old. That's gonna be a big project.
Yes,
That's
it
when
is.
you're gonna have to plan out your unit bonding. So again, be critical to get that before we make any big concrete decisions.
I agree, they have to go hand in hand.
You
The
gotta work
idea though is
together.
if this board says, no, I don't wanna go any more money, that makes a problem. Or,
We might,
Might
let's
just,
start the
and
process.
we can close it, it's 10 minutes to 6, we can close the discussion. I'm just, if someone said, we've got all these big projects coming up, and for 1%, I'll give you the money for all of it right now.
I mean, really, that's, yeah, one.
I would take it.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that. You are.
Call the question.
Who's not agreeing with that?
Jason? Jason's not,
1 year.
Call the question, we're done.
okay.
Vote.
No, we're not, we don't have to
No,
vote
no,
on
no,
anything.
no.
We have a motion.
You got a motion.
We have a motion and a
Motion and a
second.
second.
To start
Oh,
the
on
process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's sit
Yep.
with it,
Just
yeah.
Sorry,
All in favor of Sid starting the process with that bank? Okay. Federal investment infrastructure replacement.
That's something I kind of already went over as part of this bonding, and it's in the memo about the money that's appropriated.
Right, that's the 25 million you're saying, okay?
Yeah, over the next
10-person complaint?
Wait on the PUC.
Wait, did we respond?
We responded, yeah, we responded on August 3rd, the city of Lewiston responded on August 6th, so that is all part of the file, so we're just waiting to hear back from PUC regarding that.
Okay,
They wanted a lot of information from you, didn't they?
What's that?
The PUC about that 10-person complaint, the email we got from you or something, they needed information from you about different, I figure right now.
you asked for an extension?
Yes, initially they wanted it July 6th, so I had to file for an extension,
Yeah.
which we got, and then we did file it August 3rd.
Okay.
That took a chunk of your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, that was the understatement of the meeting.
I hate to beat a dead horse, but what was the action taken on that? So we're gonna, the cost share action, just to remind me.
Well, we are gonna have an executive
That's-
session next
yes.
meeting that'll talk about the resolve and the next steps,
Right.
strategy for the next steps.
Trustee open session.
I have one item,
I have one item.
just real quick, I know we're running out of time. Are you still having meetings with the city manager?
They're scheduled, but we haven't had one for 3 months.
I believe.
There was supposed to be one yesterday, but Phil was on vacation.
Okay.
That's the update, monthly update meeting you're talking about?
Well,
Yes.
you used to have meetings with the city.
Yep.
Because, I mean, one of the things, since I've been on this board, I've always tried to help us, or see that we work with the city whenever we can, and try to cooperate. And I know that it's both sides, I've tried to work both sides, so it's always an issue either way, but I just get this feeling that maybe we're not working with the city, and at least not communicating. I mean, I had a conversation with the mayor, and he seemed to be frustrated because I guess he asked for some information about future possible projects, you know, neighborhoods or roads or things that we might want to do, and we were supposed to give him some information.
Who's he reached out to?
I was talking to him, he just brought it up. And felt
reached
like
out
we
to-
hadn't been given any.
There's some information he's waiting for from us.
Yeah, because they're talking about, you know, expanding the sewer and water system, some recommendations that we would have. I'm not sure. But I get this feeling that, I don't know if Phil should be involved, but when it comes to the cities working with us, we need to make sure we're communicating, and if they have anything they're waiting for us for, you know, information or whatever, just let right here.
I'm not aware of anything they're waiting for
All right, well,
from us.
but
We've heard this before,
Yeah.
it's,
When was the last time that you talked with the city manager about how things go in between us.
Like I said, we have a meeting scheduled every month. Somehow they end up not happening. They're scheduled. We do need to get back on track to meet. The last few have not happened.
On whose side, which side, you or them have been responsible for that?
Well, the last time Mike and I showed up at the office, there was a mess up in the agreement on when we were meeting. We were both at this. I don't want to.
Right, okay.
We have not been able to connect.
Wow. And you were doing so well for so long.
We'll continue to schedule them and hopefully have the meetings.
Well, I know there's always been this friction, and then I'm hearing some talk about wanting to have the city take over the sewer and water district, and
You guys do Outlook or whatever, and you have on these
Yep.
calendars, you
Yep.
do calendar invites?
Yep.
And we went,
Yeah? And they said they didn't have
there
the,
was a cross-scheduling.
That was 3 months ago?
2 months ago.
2 months ago. And then yesterday you were just on vacation.
So what would you say as far as of you and Mike meeting with the city people? Where's the ball, in whose court would you say? Or don't you know?
Well, it's a cooperative thing. We have a scheduled time to meet. It just hasn't happened.
yeah, we had
No,
to break down the
nothing was set.
communication on the, you know, up by St. Dom's, right?
I mean, that's the formal meeting we have, but we're in contact with the city quite often. I talk to Phil quite often about different things. The formal meeting we're supposed to have hasn't happened for a while, but it's not as if we're out of contact.
I went to a plan review committee meeting today, sat down with all the departments, talked about all the projects going on in the city. So it's not like we're not communicating, you know, and that's working really well.
Did they give you, the planner give you, or Eric or somebody give you, you know, what they proposed and asked for numbers to put to the?
That's not discussed in those meetings. We're talking about developments going on around the city, new subdivisions, new housing complexes, how water and sewer interacts with that. He has not asked for me for anything like you're talking, any type of information like that. I haven't had any requests. Anything I ever get requests in these meetings, I top priority, get it right to him. So,
So maybe the mayor needs to be talking to the city manager about that.
Well, I don't know.
Well, I mean,
If
it
it's
sounds to me
information,
like
let me
you
know if
guys
there's
are.
something they're waiting for from us. I'm not aware of anything.
No, I mean,
So you have regular operations meetings?
yeah, every month we have a plan review committee meeting.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Also,
sounds-
Steve's his rep, so I mean, I'm not blaming Steve in any way, but, you know, maybe if he's got
Jason
something.
have
No
any-
one's- no one's
Jason have
mentioned
any
to me
issues with
that-
you about
that-
something he's waiting for, some information he's waiting for?
no, has not.
Future agenda item, $55 billion federal money for water infrastructure. Future agenda item would be to talk about a shovel-ready plan for a filter plant. So if the money becomes available through the state funding, we can do filters.
What would it
So,
cost to do a study like that?
well, we'll find out. I didn't want to talk about it tonight, but I just figured future agenda item. Everybody okay with that?
Well, they keep throwing the numbers out, but we just got an estimate.
Shovel-ready plan is what we want.
55, how much?
We get the money,
Billion.
we sell Lewiston
54
water,
billion to Chicago?
like we sell Foley.
Okay, adjourn?
Well, actually, there's one thing that's not on the agenda. I know you had a special vote to add something to the agenda. I think we should talk about a recent complaint filed with the State Board of Licensure for professional engineers.
I don't know if they've read it yet, but I can
Well,
recuse
if you
myself.
want to put it on the
That was-
agenda, go with, I mean, that's,
Well,
emailed ahead
I
of
think,
time,
I
but
think it's
it
something
wasn't.
we need to address now.
It's not an executive committee thing.
It would have to be for next time, wouldn't it, if it's an executive?
Well, it doesn't have to be necessarily executive session,
Okay.
but I think this should, you're aware of it, right? Steve?
yeah, but we're at the end of the meeting, so if somebody wants to suspend the rules to,
Well, if no one wants to discuss it, then that's fine too. I
If it's
guess.
important, we wait till next month and we don't deal with it, and next month we're gonna kick ourselves.
I think if it's important, Sid would have communicated that to Steve, and if we need an executive session, it has to be next meeting, and we should discuss whether or not it needs to be. I'm not,
I mean, is there action required by the board today? And I can't believe that, I mean, we should have, if this was that important, we should have been addressing it earlier in the meeting.
Well, we're still here.
But it wasn't on this agenda, so.
It's not on the
It
agenda.
came
right?
up after the agenda came out.
So in order to put it in, someone needs to suspend the rules and add in an agenda item, and we need to second it, and then we have to vote on it to approve the agenda item.
I'd like to move to suspend the rules and add this Sid's topic as an agenda item, this meeting.
And what's the topic? It's the Board of Licensure?
Being filed with the State Board of Licensure for professional engineers.
Do we have a second?
It's my bylaws.
I think it needs to be executive session material itself.
agreed.
I don't have a second, Sid.
Well, we can make a motion to do on the next.
Executive session for the next meeting. I think that makes sense too.
The urgency that Bob brings up, if there's something that's required, beforehand, of course, obviously, if it's that urgent, we would need to have a special meeting. Just wanted to
If
throw
it
that out.
requires a special meeting, we can call one, right? What do we need to do to call a special meeting?
We unanimously have to agree.
Well, I think the president can call one.
He can call one, but if we don't all show up, we can't do it.
It has to be unanimous at the special meeting?
Everyone has to show up.
And it needs to be public notice timely too, right, Sid?
Yep, it'll be advertised. If it's gonna be executive session, it has to be advertised, and you can go into executive session.
For special meetings, I don't think they need public notice. I don't think the special meeting, like an emergency meeting, I think can be, if it's unanimous. But
Oh, because
I'm
it's not
sure-
public, it's not public, it's just executive session, is that it?
I'm not sure.
It has
about
to be
executive session.
advertised, but then you can go into executive session.
Yeah. Still public, has to be public notice.
Still needs to be advertised.
That's why we couldn't go in today in executive session.
Public notice, but like within 24 hours or something, it's not
Something
like,
like that,
yeah.
36 hours, I think is what it is. Okay.
Okay,
if needed, motion to adjourn.
that's, yes, we do.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
Okay.